We are on the air. I believe we're on the air now. We've been testing something pretty new because obviously we've seen that the automated stream is running away in the background. We're also live in the flesh as well on our actual commentaries, and we had to do it a different way, so that's why we've had a bit of a catastrophic start. I can hear something in the background there. I think that's us, Strat. I think I heard feedback from someone just over there. We've got a team with us. You can see them right underneath me. And, of course, the main feature tonight is tracking the storm. Hanna is probably the biggest thing tonight. Let me just sort out that bottom bar as well because that was out of date. Hurricane warnings have been issued. That's the big news right now. And I don't know if you guys want to talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah, I believe a hurricane warning is in effect. Hold on, let me pull up the warnings here. Here we go. Hurricane warning is in effect from Baffin Bay to Mesquite Bay in Texas. A tropical storm warning is in effect from the mouth of the Rio Grande to Baffin Bay and Mesquite Bay to San Luis Pass in Texas. A storm surge warning is also in effect from Baffin Bay to Sargent, Texas.
And here is the latest radar imagery looking at the coast of Texas right now. Hurricane warning in effect, as we mentioned. It's still a tropical storm. It's got winds of 50 miles per hour, pressure of 999 millibars, last I checked anyway. I think it's still that, right? And it's likely to intensify to become a Category 1 hurricane just before making landfall, probably somewhere just south of Corpus Christi. Is that right?
That appears to be the case as of now. The hurricane warnings, I think today, everyone probably was kind of expecting this. You know, we did look at Hanna yesterday. It did look like it could possibly intensify to hurricane status, but now it is likely, according to the latest cone by the NHC. Landfall location, I think, is just north of Corpus Christi, where Isaac looks to be streaming right now.
There it is. Isaac, you're live with us right now near Corpus Christi?
Corpus Christi. Yes, this is the current conditions here at my place. It was overcast earlier this morning, but now it's kind of partly cloudy with some ominous thunderstorms in the distance when I was last out there. And winds of probably about maybe 5 to 10 miles per hour sustained, probably occasionally gusting to 15 to 20 right now.
All right, keep us posted. What's the cloud coverage like up there?
Well, last I checked about an hour ago, I would guesstimate probably about 60% cloud cover.
60%. And you can see what's causing it there. It's sort of the tail end on the western side of Hanna. Let's talk a little bit about its structure. We will cover the other storms, by the way. This is just the main story that we're starting with tonight because hurricane warnings were literally issued an hour ago. So, send in your questions. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get through them all because they're coming in thick and fast already before we even made the call. But who wants to talk about how the storm's been developing today?
I can do that. So basically, today, Hanna's been in the process of forming sort of an eye wall-like feature. And Nathan, if you're able to pull up my radar scope.
Yep.
So the center of the storm is right around here. See, everything is rotating around that. There's quite a bit of cloud cover and rain on the radar. It's a mid-level eye, and we're expecting to see that clear out as we get closer to landfall tomorrow. And it's been wrapping around all day, and it's been sort of a gradual process, but we expect that it'll become faster soon.
Yeah, its movement currently due west.
Yeah, due west at about 10 miles an hour was the latest from the National Hurricane Center. So they're actually expecting it to decelerate in forward momentum slightly in the next 12 to 24 hours as it starts to approach land a bit more compared to its current movement speed.
And there's also a storm surge warning in effect right now as well. We're expecting up to 4 feet of storm surge in some areas. Where is that again?
I'm pretty sure that's right around just north of Corpus Christi. Wherever
It's right about
make landfall.
it's right about pretty much right over the central coastal bend. They're expecting 2 to 4 feet of storm surge from this.
Locations infected by the storm surge warning. It looks like Aransas Pass, Texas, Ingleside, Texas, and Portland, Texas. A storm surge warning means there's danger of life-threatening inundation, rising water moving inland from the coastline somewhere within the area between the next 36 hours. So once again, storm surge is the water that comes in ashore from these systems. As Isaac said, we're looking at 2 to 4 feet.
And I don't actually have it with me at the minute, but could someone bring up the latest National Hurricane Center forecast cone?
Yeah, I can get that really quick for you.
It would be very useful to see that, and you can see where the warning areas are, relatively speaking, as well. Let's see if we can get this, and there we are. So actually dips towards the south according to the National Hurricane Center forecast, and that's what models have been saying generally as well. The mesoscale models have really been decent with this in the last 24 hours. They've been saying low 990s at landfall, strong tropical storm, borderline hurricane. Looks like that might play out.
Yeah, just about, and it's a bit further south than we were looking at, when the storm first became a tropical depression, 36 to 48 hours ago, about now. But regardless, if you take a look at some of the satellite imagery, if you compare it to Gonzalo, which is doing terribly out as it approaches the Windward Islands, it's a much larger system. When we were first talking about this when it became a tropical depression, and it had a close center, reconnaissance aircraft had found that, but the convection with it was quite minimal, and since then it's really blown up to a significant degree. Fortunately, right now, at least in terms of rainfall totals, most of that's to the east of the center, but because there isn't a lot of wind shear right now in general, it won't be too difficult for it to wrap that around over the next 24 hours as it continues to approach land.
Yep, and every so often you'll see the wind speed probabilities at the bottom of your screen and the rainfall expectations. Some areas could get 8 inches or more.
Yep, they were saying localized maximums earlier today. They're looking at for 12 inches. So considering the first advisor is saying regional 2 to 4 with localized maximums of 6, big difference.
Yeah, it's gone up.
Yeah, my area is forecast to get rainfall of about 4 to 6 inches or so, with isolated amounts higher if possible.
Now, Isaac, are you in the hurricane warning?
Yes, I am.
What are your plans then now?
Well, after this stream, I'm going to make sure I have my my preparations done. I have everything tied down, and I need to tie down outside. I have all my batteries set. I have my flashlights with me in case the power goes out. I have plenty of food, plenty of water. I was smart and I got all that yesterday before everybody started kind of buying everything off the store shelves now. So I'm ready for the storm right now. It's just wait and see at this point for me.
Wow. Okay, well, let's see if we can get onto some questions. And if you want to ask Isaac anything, who's right in front of this storm right now, feel free. I'm just going through some. I don't think it'll be possible to get through them all because there's so many. Any possible impacts for Tropical Storm Hanna if it makes landfall? Well, that's literally what we're talking about. What wind speed do we expect at peak? National Hurricane Center running with 75 miles an hour at peak as it makes landfall in around 24 hours or less. What can we say about rapid intensification?
It's certainly possible. The latest ship's analysis, I believe, had a 36% chance of rapid intensification in the next 24 hours by 25 knots. That would make it 70 knots if it were to do that. That would be 80-mile-an-hour winds. Once again, the 36% chance, I believe, according to the latest data from that.
And is Recon in the storm right now?
Not yet, but they've taken off.
Yeah, their exact location right now, they're at least an hour away from getting a first pass. They're around the periphery on the far eastern side, at about 27.8 degrees north and 85 degrees west right now. So they still have a bit to go before they really get there to get our newest pass.
So again, you can see all of our panels on display here. On the far left-hand side of your screen, you can see Hurricane Douglas, which is the other US threat right now, and not where you often hear of, Hawaii. It could be a hurricane landfall, and that would be the first one since Iniki, right?
Yes.
So that
Gazelle
is
came close in 2014, but not quite.
28 years since the last hurricane landfall in Hawaii. So that's something we're watching very closely for. Sea surface temperatures are warming up ahead of the storm, but so is wind shear. So it's probably going to be a slow weakening trend. And at the moment, it's still holding quite firm at low-end Category 3. And it's about how far from land now? 36 hours? No, more than that, sorry. 60 hours
higher.
or so.
Yeah,
Something.
its closest approach to the Big Island as a hurricane on the latest forecast cone is about 60 hours right now, 60 to 66, and then crossing through the rest of the islands between that and day 3s.
Yep. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. We're here for 3 hours tonight, so there'll be plenty of time to go through everything and get any updates when they come in. I don't think we're expecting that many updates during this 3-hour period, although near the end of our second hour, the National Hurricane Center should be updating with intermediate advisories on all of the 3 cyclones right now.
Yeah, the other thing is that we've got recon going, so we can follow the planes as they go.
And that's happening right now, isn't it?
Yep.
That would be happening right now.
So what are they up to?
Well,
They are currently heading into the outer bands of the storm, although they're of course not going to be hitting the strongest winds for another good half hour, maybe an hour.
yep. And there's actually also another reconnaissance plane heading towards Gonzalo right now, too.
Wow.
Surprisingly.
I mean, Gonzalo, not looking great, is it?
Yeah, I think the only reason they're actually sending it there is just to make sure that it's actually still alive.
There's a little satellite feed of the Atlantic Ocean as a whole, and you can see it there looking very limp down there near the bottom center of your image. And at this rate, it's going to keep going west and could end up being a bit of a Brett. If people remember that from 3 years ago, we covered it. Made landfall as a weak tropical storm on Trinidad.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, with Gonzalo, I can say we're probably quite fortunate. You know, expectations for this were much loftier
Were they,
even
though?
18 to 24 hours ago. I mean,
Well, you see at it as a hurricane, I
Texas-
suppose.
that's true, and you know, but to be fair, they were saying the whole time that it was very uncertain, especially because you know you had
Yes.
the HRF and a couple other models taking it up to at least a Category 1 hurricane. Some of them were taking it higher, but the global models were depicting a situation much similar to what we're seeing right now. You know,
Yeah,
but
it was
when
a
people
it was a
saw the
real
hurricane
split.
watches, you know, even yesterday, definitely much more concern, fortunately, than there is now. The hurricane watch is actually completely discontinued that were in place
Yeah.
earlier today.
And just to give another mention, looking east there, you can see already emerging off Africa is a vigorous tropical wave, and the National Hurricane Center already giving a moderate chance on that.
Yep, 40% in the next 5 days right now. If it were to develop, they're looking potentially at a similar spot to where Gonzalo formed. So that's, you know, getting to long-range forecasting, but the Windward and Leeward Islands might have something else to watch as we head into next week.
But some of the models suggesting that that could be a significant cyclone moving through the Lesser Antilles next week.
Yeah, the global models have been much more, you know, bullish on how strong they potentially want that to be down the line, mostly because they're expecting environmental conditions around the system when it gets there will be much more favorable than what we're looking at for Gonzalo right now as it continues its downward trend in intensity. So when we get to early next week, it's going to be something to keep a much closer eye on for sure.
Now we're looking back at the Gulf of Mexico, and you can see it's been occupied by a large part of it by Tropical Storm Hanna, and it's got quite a lot of influence about it, hasn't it, looking at the wide picture?
Oh, certainly. It's
Yeah.
quite a quite a large storm.
Absolutely, and Hanna, the rain bands of Hanna are actually affecting many portions of the coastal south of the United States, including Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and of course Texas.
And that's the voice of Cesar. And Cesar, you might experience some of this storm as well up in Mexico.
Quite a bit. I've been expecting a little bit of this storm from now. Probably in the next 2 days, I'll be receiving about 100 millimeters. That's about 4 inches of rain. Probably when the storm is by then it's a tropical depression, making landfall, entering in the border of United States and Mexico. So I don't know yet how bad it will be, the storm here in Monterrey, where I'm located, which is in the northeast part of Mexico. But of course, many forecastings are predicting that at least 100 millimeters of rain in my place only in the Sunday, and Monday and Tuesday another 75 millimeters. So there will be another 3 inches of rain. So of course it will be quite a lot, some
Definitely.
flash flooding. That's right.
Yes, flash flooding in a lot of areas along the border, really, by the looks of things, because there's quite a significant swathe of up to 8 inches of rain that can fall in the whole southern part of Texas there.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Oh, yep, totally. Someone actually asked a question, or it's kind of a statement.
Right.
It's actual with a donation, so thank you for that. But they're saying that it looks better and stronger than Imelda did last year. Which
Oh, well, it is, yeah.
very large
And-
amount.
Yeah, it
The thing is with
Very-
Imelda, though, it stalled. You can't really compare the two, but worth watching.
Yeah, you know,
I lost my
was-
train of thought there, sorry. Someone else might fill in.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Well,
Imelda had a lot more total rainfall because it really stalled out over land. This is gonna move basically due west, a bit of a tilt to the south as we keep going on in the forecast time frame, and because it's not stalling,
It's not
you know,
gonna hit.
we're not gonna see the absolutely torrential rainfall totals that we saw from Imelda necessarily. Although still definitely higher amounts are possible. You know, localized up to 12 inches right now. But the wind speed will be much more of a concern, potentially a bit of storm surge right around where it makes landfall and just a bit north of that as well.
Imelda was completely different. That one made landfall around the Houston, Galveston area, if memory serves me right. This one's going to be hitting coastal Bend region of Texas here.
Yeah,
Well-
they're not even the same area of Texas. Imelda made landfall,
Yeah.
I think, near Freeport. So that was in like eastern Texas. This is going to be in like central southern Texas.
South Central Texas, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
Discards that and Hanna could be a significant storm. We had Harvey and we had Imelda, two very significant cyclones from for Texas. They are still recovering from those impacts. Hanna is moving not that fast, and it's a big storm. And of course, those dimensions, of course, of the storm could be a problem as well for the total rainfalls. Of course, it's moving, so that's some. Well, if you want to see that like good news, because it won't stall like Harvey and Imelda did, but still Texas is it's so sensible right now because of what happened to them years ago.
People saying a lot about eyes in the comments. Any thoughts from the team? Hanna and its eye status.
It's possible. I mean, we're going to have to wait and see, I think, until it becomes more clear, but it's possible. I won't rule that out.
Another question just in there. Will Gonzalo make landfall in Trinidad? Your guess is as good as mine. Weaker storms tend to trend further south, and Gonzalo's certainly shown us how weak it can be, so it's staying further south. So we'll see if it actually makes landfall. The fact of the matter is, Trinidad, a fairly small island. Whether it makes landfall there or not, or whether it just has a close pass, there wouldn't be much difference. Let's... Yes?
I was going to say that the other the other thing that you have to consider is if Gonzalo is even going to still be around by the time it gets to the Windward Islands.
Well, it'll still deliver some rainfall to the area.
Well, of course, yeah, it's still going to... still have to worry about, like, rain and stuff, so, yeah.
I mean, regardless of whether or not it's a tropical storm or even a tropical cyclone at that point, it's still going to bring at least, gusty or sustained winds and periods of heavy rainfall to the land areas that cross it. And also, notably for Gonzalo, they shifted the cone quite a bit south again for such a near-term forecast. Earlier today, they were saying Grenada might be much more likely for potential landfall zone or close impact from the storm. They've shifted that all the way down south, basically right over Tobago now. So I would say a valid question to ask if it could end up getting towards Trinidad instead if we really keep this trend up.
Yes. There's a question on that note. Will Gonzalo die and be nothing?
It's a real possibility.
Hopefully yes, but the conditions in the Caribbean are getting worse for Gonzalo. But well, we can't discard that it could reorganize again and re-strengthen again. The Caribbean is a very it's a place with very high sea surface temperatures.
Odds against, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, right now the consensus is that it might barely survive to the Caribbean at this point. It's looking terrible. It's going to be interesting.
And it's a very small storm as well.
Yeah, and from that point, the global models have basically nailed it for the most part in the later part of the intensity forecast to date, it seems. Once we get into the Caribbean Sea, that really increases the likelihood and certainty in their forecast that it's going to basically evaporate into nothing from wind shear and harsher conditions. That dry air has really obliterated the organization that it was really trying to show a while ago, 2 days ago at this point, really. So fortunately, the odds of it rebounding or redeveloping in the Caribbean would be extraordinarily low because even if the sea surface temperatures and the ocean heat content are very favorable for a storm to be there and gather steam if the conditions are right. The conditions around it, other than that, sheer dry air, really won't be conducive at all. And I don't know if Elliot or Preston or Ike, if you could pull up a water vapor imagery to really show how that dry air's wrecked the storm for the most part. That would be.
I can get that
see
for you, Strat.
Absolutely, thank you.
You were still talking about Gonzalo there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So just so we don't get confused, we're looking at Hanna right now, and we're about to take a look at what Gonzalo is looking like with dry air intrusion in just a moment. Is there anything that we haven't covered regarding Hanna? Just that there's a hurricane warning for a small area. The rest of a large part of the Bend area there has a tropical storm warning and a storm surge warning for quite a large area as well, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of the coastline has that right now. A significant portion of the central and southern part of the Texas coastline are all under tropical storm force warnings right now. I don't know if we want to go over them real quick again, because I know there's a lot of people always flowing in and out.
I'll go over them one more time here.
Sure.
So, just to clarify here, a hurricane warning is in effect for Baffin Bay to Mesquite Bay in Texas. A tropical storm warning is in effect from the mouth of the Rio Grande to Baffin Bay in Texas, as well as from Mesquite Bay to San Luis Pass in Texas, and a storm surge warning is in effect for Baffin Bay to Sargent in Texas.
And I also don't know if anyone can pull this up really quick as well, because this would be a useful figure to have, because, even though this might become a minimal hurricane as is currently forecast, the overall largest threat for land as a whole from Hanna will still be, the heavier rainfall totals, particularly in the very southern part of the state. So if we could get a rainfall map up as well, just to show the forecasted totals across a regional basis, locally you can get higher amounts. That would probably be very useful to show off as well.
Whilst we're waiting for
Speaking
that,
of rainfall,
yes.
I was just gonna say quickly. Speaking of rainfall, looks like I'm gonna get another outer band from the storm in about maybe half an hour or so here. So keep an eye on my webcam. Go ahead, Nathan.
All right, we'll wait on that one. But looking back at the radar imagery, you can see that I was just going to touch on probably the same thing. There are some rain showers entering that area, coming in from the northeast there, in association with the storm. Short, sharp showers by the looks of things. The core of the storm is still well away from the coastline at this point in time, but there is quite a bit of heavy weather to its north and northeast as well. A few flare-ups that are occurring overland, mainly in Louisiana and possibly Mississippi as well.
Nathan, I don't know if you can pull up the rainfall imagery I have on my screen. I don't know if you have it up yet, but we have rainfall rates a solid 4 inches for most of the southeastern area. Just near Corpus Christi, maybe isolated amounts up to 7 inches. Looks like most of the rain, however, is going to fall in the Gulf of Mexico. And we do have some isolated splotches in areas of Louisiana from the outer bands.
Yeah, so you saw that there, and that's our stream. Just leave that up for a little while longer whilst we have a look at those numbers. So, the blue area, there's quite a bit of it inland in southern Texas. That's 7 inches. Up to the whites or the greys into sort of off-white, 9+ inches, mostly offshore, but it's depicting 1 or 2 little areas inland as well. What you will notice is that, well, actually you won't notice it so much because you can't see the southern side, but the northern side, I believe, has quite a lot more precipitation, and especially the eastern side. At least at the moment.
Yeah, it's been for the most part. It's been just like most of the worst weather has been located on the eastern side of the storm. I don't know, that may change over the next coming hours here. It could, but that's what it's been doing pretty much so far for like pretty much all of its life.
Yeah.
And I saw a question in chat, just important to answer this one as well. Someone asked if there's any evacuation orders in place because of the storm right now, Tropical Storm Hanna. There isn't any involuntary evacuation orders at this point in time at all, but Kleberg County, a judge did issue a voluntary evacuation order for that county in particular. So people in that region do have a voluntary evacuation order. They don't technically have to, but it's an advisory in place, particularly for low-lying areas as well. If you're on the real coastline, a couple of feet of storm surge can be very detrimental, along with the higher winds at the exact landfall spot, heavier rainfall totals as well.
Just a reminder, this is Force 13 Live. We've been here for half an hour with discussion on the latest tropical developments. 3 tropical cyclones are currently active, and all of them are affecting land, 2 in the Atlantic and 1 headed for Hawaii. Hurricane Douglas, which is on the left-hand side of your screen, is still a Category 3, is about to lose Category 3 status, we think. But it's still making a good fight of it right now, and the Hawaiian impacts could range from tropical storm force winds with heavy rainfall, possibly hurricane force winds, and that'll be the first time since 1992. And of course, we're looking at Hanna, and if we just pop back over to the wide shot of the Atlantic again, where did that one go? There it is. You can see Gonzalo over there having a terrible time. Struggling as it approaches the Lesser Antilles. Those of you who've been paying attention in recent days, you saw that the National Hurricane Center were predicting a hurricane out of this, and they issued, the local governments, the islands, issued hurricane watches in Barbados and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and they've been removed because Gonzalo looks quite abhorrent right now. Not the National Hurricane Center's fault. with predicting the hurricane because, as we explained earlier, there was a massive split and there's very low confidence in that forecast. I didn't see many people not run with the hurricane peak anyway, so slightly unexpected that it's weakened so much at this point. And you can probably barely even see it near the bottom of the screen there, slowly headed for probably Trinidad and Tobago at this rate.
Yeah, and one of the reasons it's unfortunately been able to weaken like this, you can kind of see on that satellite imagery, that visible, very high quality, the dry air that's kind of palpably visible to the north of the system, kind of pressing down on top of it. And that's really been protruding into the circulation, and the structure of the system has really stopped it, fortunately, from becoming a hurricane-strength system as it continues to approach these islands. You know, the National Hurricane Center has said that there could be some slight re-strengthening, especially when we're dealing with these small storms. You know, they're prone to bounces and drops in intensity. But
considering that it has veered further south, Strat, they might have a point because that's further away from that dry air in the upper tropics.
That's true. They're only calling for minimal re-intensification at this time period, fortunately, as well. Their latest intensity one had a maximum rebound of 5 miles an hour to 45 miles an hour. And they hold it at that for about a day or so, and then weaken it and then dissipate it at 3 days out now. So you can argue, even if it re-strengthens a little bit, that a lot of the southern Windward Islands really were able to dodge a bullet somewhat, because even as we look at it right now, it was already small before, but a lot of the convection that was much more apparent yesterday is just weaker as well. And if that trend holds up, then you're looking at a situation where even the rainfall totals are getting shoved down as well.
Keep sending in your questions. There's a lot coming in. Keep trying if it doesn't work the first time, because they just slide by real fast. Could Hanna reach Category 2 is the latest question that's come in.
It is possible if it organizes quickly enough and it starts to rapidly intensify, but it only has probably at this point a little less than 24 hours before it makes landfall, and it's currently a 50 mile an hour tropical storm, so it'd have to intensify by 45 knots or so.
Yeah, it's quite unlikely.
It would have to do a lot of intensification to get there.
Yeah.
If the convection was much more uniform, you could give it a better chance of doing that, but you're at a situation where even though it's expected to strengthen significantly in the next 24 hours to Category 1 status, right now most of the convection is still displaced to the east of the center of the storm. And that's not necessarily due to wind shear, that's just due to the organization of the storm to date. That is beginning to change, but it's unlikely that will happen quick enough to allow such extreme re-intensification or continued intensification that you'd see this reach Category 2, because at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Central, when the last cone came up from the National Hurricane Center, they're saying it had about 21 hours or so from that point until landfall. So now it's a bit under 20 hours, just about. It would really have to do something absolutely extraordinary to get there. And if that were to somehow happen, winds directly near the landfall zone would be a much higher concern than what we're looking at right now. But regardless, general impacts, key messages are those higher rainfall totals in southern Texas, localized up to 12 inches, 12 for flash flooding. Elevated winds, especially once you get to Category 1 intensity at the exact landfall location where those strongest winds are occurring, a bit displaced to the north of that, most likely. So just really stay on guard for those. Fortunately, this isn't having 4 days before landing clear-cut perfect conditions. It's just having 20 hours right now in very favorable conditions.
Question about whether Douglas can re-intensify or not.
It's trying to right now. It's trying to.
We'll get some better imagery on that shortly to show.
It's, from what I know, I think it's entering cooler sea surface temperatures, probably right around 26 or right below 26. Maybe in the short term, maybe, but long term, it's not going to
Yeah, I mean,
intensify back to like a Cat 4 or something.
Yeah, we'll say that sea surface temperatures are going to be on a decline the farther away it gets from that oceanic heat content. I will say that once it gets a little bit closer to the island of Hawaii, the sea surface temperatures do rise a little bit. So I would say personally, perhaps some minor re-intensification might happen depending on how the storm looks by that point in time. We'll just see.
This is the latest imagery on Hurricane Douglas on the screen right now.
Yeah. I mean, fortunately, though, at least when we get a really close approach to land with this storm, it doesn't have much room near Hawaii with those warmer sea surface temperatures before, if its current forecast track holds true, land interaction and elevated levels of shear would begin to interrupt the structure of the storm a bit. So it could definitely still impact Hawaii as a strong system. The current forecast is a hurricane. And we could see fluctuations in intensity, of course, but the general forecast is for a downward trend in intensity from now to at least 5 days out. Different from both storms in the Atlantic right now, it's forecast to survive past 5 days right now. So even at 50 miles an hour at the day 5 mark, as it's moving past Hawaii, it's still going to be surviving. At that point, it would be close to 175 degrees west. It might get pretty close to being a basin crosser to the Western Pacific as a tropical cyclone still.
I think it will, and that's the best the Western Pacific can hope for this month.
It's the only way the Western Pacific gets a cyclone this month is because it crosses over from the Eastern and Central Pacific to them.
Yeah.
That basically says all you need to know about the activity in that basin this season so far.
We've got a lot more questions here. I should go through them now. Could this system, Hanna that is, stall like Allison or Imelda? I know you touched on that earlier. Do you want to expand?
At this point in time, it's not forecast to. However, models, and I believe the National Hurricane Center do believe that the storm may slow down a little bit before landfall, but in terms of stalling, at this point in time, it's not forecast.
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
it's not going to stall.
yeah,
I don't
it's
think
forecast to move a bit slower in the next, 24 hours to landfall than it was in the 6 hours prior to right now. But it isn't forecast to stall by any means. It might slow down to, 7 to 8 miles an hour, maybe even down to 6 if it gets lucky. But it won't be stalling by any means. It's supposed to shoot off mostly to the west and then start to tilt towards the south a bit. It has a pretty good steering current pushing it that direction right now, and that isn't supposed to collapse.
Okay, what are our thoughts on the latest tropical wave that has a medium chance to develop within 5 days?
It's an interesting system. It's a very intense wave for this time of year. And it's got a lot of water vapor that was left over from Gonzalo. And the Euro model has been bullish on this. I'm not sure about the GFS, really haven't looked at the GFS to be honest. But definitely the Euro is picking up on this system, and it'll be one to watch in the coming days.
Yeah, I mean, the 18Z GFS is coming out right now. It doesn't pick up on it this run in particular, but, it's been trading on and off on picking up on it within the past day and a half or so now. The Euro, as you said correctly, does pick up on this once we get to day 5 and 6 and it enters the Caribbean Sea at that point. So we're mostly looking at it for development right now, potentially at days 3 to 5 for impacts on the Windward and Leeward Islands right now.
More questions then. Is there a chance that Gonzalo, if still a tropical cyclone, hits the coast of South America instead of the Windward Islands?
An interesting question.
Well, sorry.
Go ahead.
Cesar?
Well, thank you. It's the odds are not that high. The last system that made landfall directly in South America in the northern hemisphere was bred in 2017, and then was in 1974 or 1993 as well. So, well, the odds are not that high, and Gonzalo looks like that it will make a turn to the west-northwest before actually making landfall in Venezuela. That is the closest path of Gonzalo.
If it
And
kept
if it
going
does,
due
well,
west, that would happen, but I'm not
that's
seeing
true.
it.
Yeah, I would note though, if it actually survives all the way out to day 3, like the National Hurricane Center is saying, and it stays this week, and they continue having to adjust their forecast track to the south, as they've been doing for about the past 24 hours now. Even like I said earlier in the stream, this morning, heading into the early afternoon, is looking like the closest approach to any of the Windward Islands would be to Grenada. That's shifted to the island of Tobago. So if you keep that trend up for another day or so, it would be possible, if it survived, in theory, for it to make a landfall in South America. At day 3 right now. Actually, that's not even day 3 fully. It's 2 a.m. on Monday, Atlantic time. Parts of South America, the mainland, are actually in the cone of uncertainty.
Hmm.
But we're looking at a situation where the storm might not even be alive at that point. So you can't really use that and say, oh, this storm's definitely going to make landfall in South America at all. Just that those regions should keep an eye out for potentially slightly elevated rainfall totals in relations to the system.
Let's move on. How do the recon planes tell if a rapid intensification is occurring with Hanna? And whilst we're on that subject, you might want to give us an update on what they're up to as well, if they're doing anything.
Well,
Yes,
Recon has gotten close to the storm now, and their status on their page there says that they're currently getting into the storm now, and also some information about Recon for Tropical Storm Hanna. To my knowledge, the NOAA part of the hurricane hunters are going to be the only people that are going to be going into the storm, due to the fact we of course have Tropical Storm Gonzalo going on, and of course Hurricane Douglas going on. So the reconnaissance planes are kind of tied up now between those 3 systems. But to my knowledge, all the NOAA planes, the 2 NOAA planes, are going to be focusing on Tropical Storm Hanna. Go ahead.
Yeah, they're very stretched right now. And a lot of people talking about and curious about why the Western Pacific is misfiring so badly this season so far.
I would say it's probably due to maybe a suppressive phase of the MJO, or convective Kelvin waves. I'm not quite sure on that, but it's just, we've only seen 2 named storms, which is just not usual for heading into August.
I think it's
You'd
usually
normally
about 8 or 9 by now.
Way
The,
behind.
the average is about 7.
7?
Around this time of year. Yeah,
And by this
7 to 8.
time, we should be having a significant typhoon as well. So, well, this is concerning a little bit, because all the energy that accumulates could be resulting in a very bad storms later on.
Yeah,
There-
we say Atlantic all the time, and it goes for any basin really. One storm can make the year, to be honest. You can have a very suppressive season in terms of total storm formation, but the storms that do form be unusually destructive.
Yeah,
And-
never underestimate that basin. Meanwhile, Strat, we've got the Atlantic here, and if Hanna fails to become a hurricane, then all the letters from A through H will have only been tropical storms. And that also happened in 2011, by the way.
And I believe that would be the only other time that's happened.
That's true.
Well, I mean, I guess we can say that's a pretty fortunate thing then, because we've been seeing a very active season in terms of storm formations.
Yeah.
And both Hanna and Gonzalo are now storms that originated from tropical
Well, this is
waves
the
rather
thing.
than-
You look at on face value at the numbers. It's our 8th storm of the season, and usually we're up to 2 or 3,
About, yeah.
something
so
like that. So it's
2 to 3 hurricanes.
literally the
What is it?
opposite of the Western Pacific is the Atlantic right now, and 8 named storms, but the accumulated energy, the ACE as it's called for those who are unfamiliar, accumulated cyclone energy, how much a storm produces over its lifetime, is lower than average by quite some distance, isn't it?
Is it actually lower than average? Hold on. I think
Is
it's
it not?
slightly above
I'm not sure.
average.
I was thinking of the other
Let me
basins.
check. Let me check here.
But we're not talking 2005 right now for ACE, by any means. Because 2005 had already had a Category 5 and a Category 4 by now.
Yeah.
You also
So
had
for
Cindy too, I believe.
Atlantic-
And a Category
for
1.
the for the Atlantic right now, the ace is currently at 10.8, and the average to date is 6.8.
There we go.
And the average named storms to the state is 1.6, and we have 8.
Crikey.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
It is.
Yep.
It is incredible because it hasn't been seen before. We are on storm number 8. 2005 only did that when?
By early August. So
Early
August.
August. That's the record.
August
Um,
9th, I believe.
And here we are.
August 3rd. August 3rd.
We're now a week and
No,
a half,
August 3rd.
a week and a half ahead of the busiest season on record. Not that it means that this will be the busiest season on record, but I think it's quite safe to say it's been the busiest start on record.
Yeah, and
Sure.
noting that, we've also seen quieter activity in the Eastern Pacific. And someone's asking a question I think is important to answer as well.
Sure.
How did Douglas become a Category 4 hurricane if there's a La Nina ongoing, or La Nina-like activity ongoing? And it's important to note that just because there's activity, climatologically speaking, that can ramp up the storm number totals in one basin and lower them potentially in another, doesn't mean that you can't see strong storms occur in either one of them. Just because you can say the sea surface temperatures in the Eastern Pacific are cooler than they should be, and we're seeing potential La Nina, doesn't mean that no strong systems can form there if the conditions line up properly. We've had El Ninos, which are more suppressive to the Atlantic, occur, and still very powerful storms occur in this basin as well. So it can turn down the whole season outlook, but individual storms aren't necessarily going to be stopped fully just because of overlaying climatological factors.
Yeah, absolutely. And Douglas really bucked a trend there. It's the 8th designated cyclone, and it's the first hurricane. We've had 3 tropical storms and 4 depressions that didn't even get a name.
Yeah. And going on to Strat's point again, I think a big example of that for the Atlantic at least is when we had that big El Nino in 2015, but yet we still had storms like Joaquin and we had storms like Danny still form in that basin during that year. So just because the conditions that year may not be conducive for a really active season doesn't mean that there's not a possibility for a strong system to take advantage of the right conditions during a period of time and become a dangerous and noteworthy storm.
Absolutely.
Andrew in 1992 is like a perfect example of that. It was in a very inactive season, only 7 named storms, but Andrew alone made it the costliest season on record at that point.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Very much
Andrew
is the
didn't
go-to
form-
example, yeah.
Yeah, Andrew informed very late in the season, but it was so strong, regardless of that, and impacted a high population area that it caused extreme amounts of damage. That caused
Very late
loss of
for an
life.
A storm, yeah.
Absolutely. Especially when you look at this year. And
It was
you're
still
like,
quite
well,
early in the season, somewhat. Near mid-season.
Yeah, that's true.
Um,
Someone said,
yeah.
"I think Gonzalo will even be alive in 24 hours from now." It's a valid question.
Good question.
Well,
We'll find out
not-
together.
We'll find out. Yeah. Not only is the recon in Hanna right now, that we're probably going to get our first pass before the end of the next hour of the center from the northeast side. So we'll really get a look at how strong the storm actually is. But there's also recon heading into Gonzalo right now as well, although there's not really too much left of it to talk about. Regardless, that might actually provide us some information on whether or not this is actually still a full tropical cyclone.
Well, hey, I'm pretty sure that's been well synchronized because the National Hurricane Center are due to update in just over an hour, so they're getting the data that the National Hurricane Center need to put out the best information based on actual observations, because otherwise you are flying blind just a little bit.
And also talking about observations, I was looking in our Discord chat earlier, and Hank posted saying that about 20 minutes ago, a buoy nearby Hanna Center recorded a minimum pressure of 997 millibars.
997,
That is-
did you say?
Yeah, 997 millibars
Okay.
that buoy recorded about 20 minutes ago.
So that's a falling pressure, which symbolizes an intensifying storm. Winds are likely to follow suit, and 50 miles an hour at the moment, sustained winds, and that might increase.
Yeah, it's just satellite like satellite imagery is just so impressive that I kind of doubt that this is 50 miles an hour anymore, if I'm being honest.
Fair
Although
point.
I will say, to be fair, if Recon comes back and says, "Oh, this is still 50 miles an hour," oftentimes when you have a storm in its more formative stages, even when it's starting to look very impressive, the winds take a while to catch up to that as well. And similarly, on the downside, a storm might start to look very not impressive, but its winds were so strong before that it takes a while for it to really catch up with the appearance of the system. So,
Isaac,
exactly.
getting a bit breezy?
Yeah, I was gonna say, pop on in. Before that, though, I was gonna say, go on to Hanna. You must keep in mind, Hanna's a fairly large system as compared to what Gonzalo was, and of course, with smaller storms, they are more prone to either rapid intensification or rapid weakening. But with storms like Hanna, they're prone to gradual strengthening usually and gradually weakening, of course. So just keep that in mind. But over here in Corpus Christi, in my location, I'm about to get another band. It's not really rain. It's more of just I guess a gust front. And it's probably going to be here in about 10, 15 minutes or so, and probably increase the winds here to about 30 or 40 miles per hour for a short time.
That's
It
interesting.
looks fairly dark there. Yeah.
Yeah, clouds are rolling on in now. Nathan?
Yeah, just saying that's quite interesting. It looks to me on the radar here that the rain isn't really being forthcoming. Looks like it's dissipating a little bit before reaching you.
Mm-hmm. It's mostly over Violet, Texas, and the western parts of Nueces County.
Victoria there might be getting a rain shower right now.
yeah. And just because I know there's a lot of new people coming in and out, I think you guys want to go over the watches and warnings again real quick. I can pull them up and just describe what's going on with Hannah's current warnings for everyone that's interested in those.
Mhm.
So right now we have a storm surge warning from Baffin Bay to Sargent, Texas. We have a hurricane warning from Baffin Bay to Mesquite Bay in Texas, and a tropical storm warning from the mouth of the Rio Grande to Baffin Bay, and then also from Mesquite Bay to San Luis Pass. So the tropical storm warnings are from the U.S.-Texas border to where the hurricane warnings are, and then from the end of the hurricane warnings further upstate along the coastline. Just to clear that up for people that are curious, because this storm is, believe it or not, less than 24 hours from landfall.
We think.
That's true. It could decide to randomly slow down and take a bit longer. That is true.
And that leads us on to another question. Will Hanna be like Harvey?
No.
Harvey, I'm just going to say this. Harvey was a completely different scenario. Hanna did not form east of the Leeward Islands and weaken and then come back in the Gulf of Mexico. Hanna did not do that at all. Harvey was slowing down on landfall and made landfall, of course, as a Category 4 hurricane, and then also pretty much drenched Houston in record-breaking flooding rains. And this is not going to be doing that. It's not going to be a threat to Houston at all, pretty much.
It is valid in a small way, though, that question, because this storm, if it does start intensifying and it does start slowing down, it could get to Category 1 or 2 before landfall and move real slow. Even though it's impacting a different area, there could still be catastrophic flooding, do you think?
I'm not too familiar with farther down south in terms of geography. I would say they're more prone to storm surge, really. Over here, at least, where I am, if it floods here, it usually is when we get, like, I don't know, say, like, an inch of rain in, like, the span of, like, 10, 20 minutes or something like that is usually when that happens over here. I don't know how it is farther down south there. So I'm not really, qualified to answer that.
All right, fair enough. Any other questions that you guys have seen?
There was someone asking about 92L again, the area of interest that's coming offshore of Africa right now, that really robust tropical wave. And, also to clear this up, someone's asking, could this potentially become a Category 2 storm? Extremely doubtful. It would have to double its intensity in the next 24 hours or so, really, and that's very unlikely. Even if it rapidly intensifies, which would be 25 knots in 24 hours, that'd only bring it to 80 miles an hour, which is still a hurricane. It's still a powerful storm threatening land, but it's not all the way up there to 100 miles an hour. If it was the same size as Gonzalo, had these conditions and current structure, it would probably be more likely, because if you really compare the two of them side by side, this is a much broader system, which is unfortunate for the rainfall totals, but it does fortunately mean that it's a bit more difficult for it to rapidly ramp up to the extremes in terms of wind speed catching up very quickly. It's going to take a bit longer to do that since it's going to take longer for that convection to really wrap around the system fully. We're looking at it a lot right now, and over the direct center, and a bit to the north of that and west now, there's more convection coming about. But overall, the most of the convection is still displaced a bit to the east, and that's not really due to shear. It's just due to the structure of the system for the time being.
I also saw a question mentioning the tornado threat from Hanna.
Yes.
The SBC has highlighted areas of southeastern Texas under a marginal risk that it will be a 2% chance of a tornado within 25 miles of a given point. So there is normally a tornado threat with tropical storms and hurricanes. Doesn't look to be significant by any margin, it looks like.
There's a question I can answer. Anything new about the area of interest in the southwest Indian Ocean? It's just about dying now, so that doesn't look like that's going to become anything serious. So the Indian Ocean back in the clear again, as it should be really at this time of year.
Yep. And then, if you want to go across the rest of the world real quick, I've been looking at some of the model runs from the 18Zs. There is actually the potential, if you look at the GFS run, for some sort of system to develop in the Western Pacific.
There is, yes. We've marked 10% on it.
Yeah, the latest GFS run actually picks up on it. So, across the world, we could also be seeing increased tropical activity in the Eastern Hemisphere. And the GFS also tries to pick up on something in the North Indian Ocean in the Bay of Bengal within the next 5 days as well.
It's been doing that for a while.
Yeah, so, it's holding that in the latest model run. Although I will note that other model runs aren't really supportive of that one as well. So other areas of interest to watch in the world, but the Western Hemisphere is really where it's at right now in terms of tropical action.
Absolutely. Let's just get another look at Douglas there. That's the latest imagery. Hawaii is off to the left there, about a square away, I think, on that grid. And you can see the storm itself, the eye's been channeling out again, and it's becoming clearer actually in the latest frames.
Yeah, we did talk a little bit earlier about potential slight phase of re-intensification if it really, clears out its eye. Fluctuations are possible, but it's at cooler sea surface temperatures where it's going to be much more difficult to fire up the same level of convective activity that it was having 24 to 36 hours ago. So it could clear out its eye and still be a powerful cyclone. Category 3, Cat 2, still very strong storm. But it's unlikely to see.
But here's the thing: it's not supposed to maintain its intensity right now. So if it does, that would be a big surprise.
That's true.
And bad news, by the way. It's supposed to start gradually weakening, and it might level off in intensity when it's right next to the Hawaiian Islands, if it doesn't make landfall there, because sea surface temperatures are warmer and the conditions are slightly on the favourable side. One or two models, HWRF earlier, wanted it to have a secondary Category 3 peak right next to one of the islands.
Yeah, the HRF has been very bullish on
always
intensity for cyclones the past week or so, so hopefully that doesn't happen. But if conditions are favorable enough and it stays stronger than forecast right now, you do have to keep an eye out for the potential for a bit of a stronger storm that's currently forecast if its structure really maintains itself well over the next 2.5 days, right before its closest approach to Hawaii, because sea surface temperatures extend back up more towards the favorable range when you get very close to that landmass, in particular in the Central Pacific Basin there with Hawaii. So we do have to keep an eye out for that. But regardless, we're still looking at a system that could be bringing hurricane force winds to Hawaii anyways. So a significant thing to watch right now. Hurricane watches are in effect for a reason, for sure.
And they are for a lot of the eastern Hawaiian Islands, hurricane watches, but hurricane warnings in effect for a part of Texas right now, with Tropical Storm Hanna bearing down on the area. I just heard myself briefly. If you've got any questions about any of the active storms right now, just send in your message, start your message with Force 13 all in text, and we'll try to get a response on that. But I can't guarantee it because there's so many things coming in. There's one question actually. What is the CDPS rating? What is the CDPS rating for Douglas at the moment? It's a 2 right now, I believe. CDPS stage 2. That's a 10-tiered scale, and it's not scientifically endorsed yet, I don't think, but it's Devon's invention, one of our team members. It's a 10-tiered scale that measures a potential impact of a storm. It not only measures the wind speeds of the storm, but it also measures the size of the wind field and the rainfall potential. So it's a stage 2, which is significant for Douglas, and for Hanna, is it a 2 or a 3, Strat?
For Hanna, it was the 3 at the last update.
It's a
so
3.
That was 4 hours ago now, so information definitely could have changed from then. Because at that point, it wasn't expected to become a hurricane at landfall. And I want to see the latest model runs come out fully, especially at 0Z. But I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see a bit of a risk for higher total rainfalls as well if this trend continues and it really develops more with deep convection. Especially if it slows down a bit more as well than forecast. You have to keep an extra eye out for that. But still a dangerous storm nonetheless. Flash flooding is a major concern with this. Low-lying areas on the coastline do have the threat from storm surge, even if it's only 1 to 3 feet or 2 to 4 feet. If you're at a really low-lying area, that can definitely be harmful. And at the landfall zone, keep an eye out for those stronger winds as well on the northern side of that.
On a side note, the little gust front that's supposed to be hitting here in a little bit is pretty much here right about now, and I'm seeing the winds increase a little bit on my webcam here. But go ahead, guys.
So that's a live shot out of Corpus Christi in Texas right now. And Isaac, how far is the expected landfall zone from your place?
I believe it's about 10 or 15 miles away from me, but I haven't checked since, pretty much this morning.
So worst case, you could get hurricane force winds.
Yeah, and I'm concerned about that because this is, again, a relatively large system here. So even if it ends up actually hitting Baffin Bay, I'm still expecting some hurricane force gusts from this storm.
We've got tremendous amounts of questions. Let's see, where we go in. What is the chance of Hanna dumping 20 plus inches on Houston?
None for that. The storm is moving
Not
happening.
South.
Not in Houston.
Not in Houston.
This is a
rainfall map. The National Hurricane Center, the Weather Prediction Center, has their latest rainfall map out, valid from 3:20 p.m. Central Time was when it was created, so 4:20 p.m. Eastern Time. I will say, notably, the 18Z GFS run at the very southern part of Texas, almost bordering Mexico, is hinting at the potential for higher rainfall totals than what's shown in that graphic.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, localized, their National Hurricane Center is saying up to 12 inches.
Up to 12, yeah.
Off of 12 to 14. So flash flooding is definitely a concern when you see that much rainfall coming down in a very short time period. Especially as the storm moves inland, those areas, that's going to be their main concern that they have to monitor for. So definitely, especially if you're in southern Texas, keep an eye out for that. Fortunately, it's not a too densely populated area. It's pretty sparse. But the people that are living there definitely need to be monitoring this very closely.
Once you get past about... Oh, go ahead, Nathan.
No, you first.
Oh, once you get down below Baffin Bay into Kennedy County, to really... pretty much once you get past down into Kennedy County, there's nobody lives on the coastline after that. Pretty much all of the small cities there and towns are far inland, away from the storm surge threat from this. So that's really fortunate news. And this Kennedy County will probably be the best spot for this to make landfall, due to the fact that, of course, barely anybody lives there, and the people that do live there are far inland from the coast.
Yeah, we'll be here until 8 p.m. Central Time tonight with commentary. We are also running an automated stream alongside this tonight. Just go to Force13/live on YouTube, I believe, Strat.
Yeah, that's correct. We have that fully automatic stream going all on its own. It's still live right now.
Sort of fully automatic. It's on the second day of operation. We're getting there. Just like we're getting there with our streaming skills, but it's it's all in the effort of keeping people informed, which I think we do a decent job of. But if I mean, what I like the most, what I value the most about these kinds of streams is that we answer your questions, and not many people do that. We're right here. So, here's another question. Is this like Dolly? Now, you know Dolly made landfall in 2008, almost to this day. How would this storm compare if the forecast goes as expected?
Well, Dolly was a little bit of a different scenario. That one hit around South Padre Island as I believe it was a 100-mile-an-hour Category 2 hurricane. While I wouldn't say a Category 2 hurricane is impossible from this storm, I would deem it unlikely at this point in time. Not saying it's impossible, I would say it's unlikely at this point in time. Dolly, of course, hit farther south, and Dolly was, I believe, moving a lot faster than this one is. And that one came from, I believe, the Yucatan and formed in the Bay of Campeche and headed up north here. This one is going to be a little bit farther north than that, but I can see what they're referring to there in terms of comparison. And yes, it has been 12 years since that storm.
Yeah, and someone's asking another question I think is pretty valid. It's a complex one. They're asking, how well organized do you think the storm will be at landfall? And I'm sure, Nathan, you can go into much more discussion about this, but that's really going to depend on how well the storm's able to wrap the convection that's still mostly off to the east around itself within the next 12 to 18 hours or so, more than anything else. It's really developing it more on the northern and western sides, where it's been more bare. But the organization is really going to depend on that. There isn't too high wind shear right now or anything preventing it from becoming even more organized, per se. But it's really just got to take its time to wrap itself around.
And you can see it happening right now on the satellite imagery. Left side still looks a little bit shaky, but on the right hand side, the eastern side, the convection really blowing up. I've just got a hunch, and it might be wrong, that this storm will be halfway through developing its eye and it will reach minimal category 1 status as it makes landfall and then fall away.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. The forecast discussion from the National Hurricane Center about 2 hours ago now specifically stated that curve banding features have improved and a banding eye had developed in the radar data. So it wouldn't be surprising to see something like that occur, particularly... The
question is whether it will continue to be banding or whether it will actually clear out that eye properly.
That's true. Although...
But it's got a thick band down there, though, on the southern side.
Although it doesn't have to have an eye fully cleared out to be a hurricane-strength storm, nonetheless.
Of course. Well, someone just compared it to Barry, so we know all about that one.
I don't think any of us can properly really tell you how Barry did what it did.
We covered Barry last year in the Atlantic. Definitely a hurricane. I know we have some disagreements on intensities, but Recon found a hurricane out of Barry in 2019. And it was probably, I think... actually definitely the worst looking hurricane of the 21st century, at least.
I definitely agree with that. It was so sheared. Like, everything was just placed to the south of it, and it had an almost exposed center of circulation. And it became a hurricane despite that. It was absolutely absurd to watch happen.
Looks on everything.
If you want to compare that with Hanna, you really can't, because this system already has far more convection over its center now than Barry ever did at the later stage of its life, and there isn't the same level of shear at all to try to push that convection away right now. The only thing really stopping this storm from continuing to gather intensity up towards landfall, where land interaction will start to occur, is really itself over the next 12 to 18 hours or so.
There's another interesting question, I'm sorry, about whether we'll be planning on streaming on Twitch. I think Strat knows all about that. Have we got any plans for that?
Don't worry.
For Force 13 itself, it's possible in the future, although I don't really have any specific details. A lot of us have been dealing with
oh my goodness,
getting to go back to college and stuff with everything with the coronavirus. So getting a whole structured plan to...
you mentioned the C word. You mentioned the C word. We're doomed. Do we expect Douglas to be a 1994 John? Well, there's a few differences.
Quite a few.
Adventurous question, because Douglas is doing nowhere near a track of John and nowhere near an intensity of John as well.
Yeah, the only comparison you could possibly make is if it did go into the Western Pacific, and I guess came back into the Eastern Pacific because that's what John did. Very rare storm. Not only that, it was a Category 5.
Yeah. Notably,
Douglas,
once you get to the long forecast for Douglas right now, let me pull it up real quick on my computer just to make sure I'm looking at the right thing. It really is supposed to fizzle once we get later into the forecast period. You know, National Hurricane Center has it at 50 miles an hour at day 5, which according to model runs is pretty valid of them to say. It likely could get to the Western Pacific, that 180-degree mark, as a tropical cyclone, but conditions after that aren't going to help it maintain or strengthen any further, so it's likely you see it disintegrate as it moves into that basin.
I don't know if any of you guys in the chat or in our live chat or looked at our live chat. My dad sent me pictures from downtown Corpus when a gust front was moving in, and wow, it looks pretty photogenic there. If any of you guys have screen share capabilities and are able to screen share that, I would appreciate that.
Oh, we'll get into that as soon as we can. In the meantime, this hour we'll be waiting to see if Recon find anything interesting, and then the National Hurricane Center will be putting out their intermediate advisories at the end of this hour, so we'll hopefully bring some news to you. I don't think there'll be many changes. Maybe they'll increase Hanna's intensity, but we'll wait and see on that.
I'm going to pull up these images right now. I'll screen share if and Isaac, feel free to describe them all and tell me whenever you want to flip them over to something else, because these are very great photos and kind of just show the general scene in your area.
Yeah, this is taken from there's a local trade center over here near downtown Corpus. This is where I was taken in the parking lot of that part of Corpus. This was taken by my dad about 20 minutes or so when a gust front was moving on in. And of course you could see there just the really pronounced shelf cloud there. Where he's at, I believe there's a thunderstorm trying to develop right around the area where he was at. So I think that's also due in part to why the gust front looks so impressive there. If you could flip over to the one where it shows the rain shaft there. Oops, so technical difficulties there. The one where you could show the rain shaft there, and it could easily see just how beautiful that is.
Oh, second one. All right, I got you. Here we go.
There it is.
The one that shows the rain shaft really pronounced there. It's just beautiful images, and again, this is taken from downtown Corpus. At the local indoor trade center here in Corpus Christi from the parking lot just about 20 minutes ago. Nathan?
And the third one, Strat?
Yeah, let me get the third one up really quick. Nice one with the seagull here as well.
Mid-flight. But very angry-looking clouds there.
Conditions will likely only move downhill, at least for this area, as we continue to go on over the next days that the system moves inland in the next 24 hours and then pushes in towards the Texas-Mexico border as it weakens inland, of course.
And Isaac, are you in a place that's more windy or less windy than other places in your locality?
Well, I'm not near the coast, so I'm pretty well protected. The way my camera is facing right now, it's facing, I believe, nearly due north right now. So that's where it's facing. Usually my building is protected. Oh, echo. Usually my building is protected by the winds because I'm facing this way. So usually I don't really get to see like the worst of the winds and the worst of the winds here inside my little complex here. But when you get out, I can't take the live camera off the cord, of course. But if I were to show you past these two buildings on your screen there, you would see probably a more windier situation there than this is.
All right, we get the picture for now. Let us know if it starts raining.
Probably won't be for a while by the looks of it. Oh, never mind. Actually, there's another band developing behind that. I stand corrected. Oh yeah, I'll let you know that, Nathan.
So here we are with the satellite imagery again. Just to bring you up to speed, if you've just joined us, we have 3 tropical cyclones active right now in various parts of the Western Hemisphere. There are 2 tropical storms in the Atlantic Ocean. Tropical Storm Hanna is probably the one you've heard of more than any today, because hurricane warnings are now in effect for the coast of Texas in some parts, and tropical storm warnings elsewhere. There's also a storm surge warning along the coast too. Tropical Storm Gonzalo is rather weak and struggling. You can see it there near the bottom of your picture, center of the image, towards the Lesser Antilles. Not quite made it to the Caribbean yet, and wondering whether it will. Storm's looking very poor in the latest imagery, and it looks like it's still making a beeline for Trinidad and Tobago, which it wasn't expected to hit, but we'll see what happens. To its right, on the other side of the ocean, off the coast of Africa, a strong tropical wave, you could call it right now, has a 40% chance of development in the next 5 days, and some models picking up on that being the next significant Atlantic tropical cyclone, and that would get the I name, and that would be the 9th storm. We've already had 8, which is a record starting pace. The peak of the season is in September. In the Central Pacific, we've also got Douglas, Hurricane Douglas. You'll see it somewhere. There's Hanna again, and here is Douglas. That's still a Category 3 hurricane after peaking yesterday, or last night, as a Category 4. It's still around 2 days away from the Hawaiian Islands, but hurricane watches are in effect.
Yep. And to alleviate any concerns that some people might have about Hanna after it moves inland, no, it will not be reforming in the Gulf of California, and it will not be impacting California.
Oh my god.
To clarify that for people that might be hearing that elsewhere, we'll tell you the truth right here, right now. This storm won't be redeveloping in the eastern Pacific Basin after it moves inland over Texas and northern Mexico.
The Gulf of California is very warm, but it would not... This storm, and even one of the strongest storms, would not survive a passage over... must be 1,000 miles of Mexican mountains and hills and desert.
Yeah, at desert as well.
Yeah.
And also, I know you're talking about Douglas for impacts of Hawaii. I would say the 18Z GFS is slightly to the north of the National Hurricane Center's envelope in their forecast cone, to the point where they actually take it north of all the islands barely. Rainfall and tropical storm force winds probable still on some of them in that run, but it actually makes it so that at least in that particular model run, that the Big Island, the highest population, of course, might not get tropical storm force winds if the trend to the north continues. So obviously got to hope for that, of course. But now, we're looking at a generalized forecast that would likely give tropical storm force winds to part of the Big Island at this point in time.
And Strat, what's interesting about that is that the GFS has been trending north for the last couple of runs. And I think that's partly due to just the course that Douglas has taken over the last couple of days here in the hours. So it would be a fairly good thing if the storm goes north of the Big Island. Still, as Strat said, impacts will likely still be there in the form of gusty winds and heavy rain.
I would say, it's been interesting to watch the models adapt to long-range solutions for this storm, because when it was a tropical depression, Douglas, and an invest, the model consensus was long-term to take it south of Hawaii. So as the storms continue to be stronger and stronger than prior anticipations had for it, the forecasts have adjusted further and further north. So it'll be interesting to see if it maintains its strength longer than forecast right now, whether or not the forecast track will have to adjust again to match potential further northward shift.
It's entirely possible that the storm will completely overshoot the islands, but we're not sure on that yet.
Yep. I mean, always got to prepare for the worst and hope for the best is what you got to say.
What is potentially good news, though, is even if it does clip the islands to the north, the northern side of Hurricane Douglas will be the strongest. The southern side will be quite a bit weaker. You could still get hurricane force winds, though, on the islands. That's, of course, why there's a hurricane watch. And there could be significant rainfall totals, but you wouldn't get the strongest winds, so that would be a little bit of good news there.
Yep, absolutely, but those hurricane watches are in effect for parts of Hawaii right now, and the whole state needs to monitor the development of the system closely over the coming days.
Definitely, the storm is still likely to affect most or even all of the islands.
Completely. Someone asked a question. Nathan, you're really good with seasonal analogs.
Ooh.
The best year that this can compare in terms of sea surface temperatures.
Well, I haven't looked at them for a little while, a few weeks, but it was the case that it had the best elements of 2010 and 2005, which is never good news. 2017, a little bit, but the Caribbean right now and the Gulf of Mexico, I think, is more energetic in sea surface temperatures than 2005, and heat is a form of energy, so more energetic, and the main development region is has a much larger energy base on the sea surface temperatures than 2005 does. Not quite up there with 2010, I don't think. That's the case a few weeks ago, at least. But 2010 didn't have the same conditions further west, so it may be the case that 2020 will have the best of all worlds in terms of Atlantic development, and you could be looking at a pretty bad case this season. It's already turning out that way with the 8th storm, although notably none of them have yet reached hurricane status.
Yeah, especially when we're back at Faye with 6 named storms, we talked about it, and it still is notable now. The sheer number of storms that have formed this year are immense. It basically feels like every storm that's had a chance to form has done so in the Atlantic Basin. I think over 50% of the invests have formed. Probably or at least 2/3. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know the exact number, but a very high amount of them have ended up developing. But so far, at least, all the storms have been tropical storm strength at maximum. The strongest storm we've had was 65 miles an hour. The first 8 storms, or even 6 storms, of the 2005 Atlantic hurricane season had multiple major hurricanes and at least one other hurricane thrown into that as well. I think the first 6 storms had a combined ace of 6 or 8 or something in the Atlantic, but the 2005 season had close to 60, I think. So very large variance between the 2 seasons. Taking it at face value, just looking at the number of storms that's formed, wouldn't really be productive when talking about how damaging everything with this hurricane season has been to date, although it obviously makes us very concerned for potential heightened activity later in the season as well.
There was another valid comment a moment ago, and it's about some models suggesting that the storm will intensify not only up until landfall, this is Hanna, but beyond landfall for a little while. What do we think?
Personally, I think that the brown ocean effect, it only really works well for weaker tropical storms, but we could see a slower than normal decrease in intensity up until it hits mountainous terrain, of course.
Yep.
And the Euro model kind of goes bonkers on the brown ocean effect. Numerous times in the past, I've seen it where it makes like a huge pressure over the middle of Mississippi after an invest makes landfall. Sometimes when it's doing that, so the Euro model can be in the brown ocean effect sometimes taken with a grain of salt, just because it is very, very bullish on the brown ocean effect.
I'd say when we see stuff like that, especially when the storms are cast to be at hurricane intensity, probably at its peak when it moves inland, over increasingly drier and rougher terrain that's not water. Of course, that's usually the European model doing some sort of initialization errors of some kind. I've seen multiple meteorologists actually putting out some tweets about that within the past 24 hours or so, because it's been doing that. The difference between publicly available European models and the American GFS model is the American one updates, or its frames are every 6 hours, so you get 4 frames in a day on their forecast runs. But the European model is 1 a day, so you get 1 frame for every 24 hours. So, it leads to more discrepancies between what's happening in between those frames to some extent. So maybe it doesn't necessarily mean that the storm's even getting stronger inland, but it gets stronger at the last second at that point, and then it comes down from there, but it's still potentially higher than what it was at the prior frame regardless. So I wouldn't put too much weight into the European model or brown ocean effect with this. I'd be more concerned just with the general impacts that you'd already be expecting from the storm which are localized rainfall up to 12 inches. Storm surge of up to 4 feet along the coastline right now. Heavier regional rainfall totals and strong winds at the very center and just north of that at landfall as well.
National Hurricane Center, will be issuing updated advisories shortly. In the meantime, I just want to point out some of the areas where there are some rain cells right now. Just south of Houston there, you can see some rain showers moving through to the west, possibly heavy there. And looking further west, you can see it continuing over towards Isaac's place. Let's get his local radar for the best quality imagery there. And you can see what it's looking like there. Looks like a shower passed right over the radar site, Isaac.
It's rolling and thundering over there, right over the radar site. There's tons and tons of lightning located over there right now. I just wanted to quickly go back to what Stra was saying earlier. In terms of the geography for this part of the region, it's pretty flat until you get past about the Alice. A little bit to the west of Alice, Texas is right about when it starts to get more hilly over here in this part of Texas. So it's pretty flat for first few 100 miles.
Okay, let's see if we have any more questions. Well, there's always questions, and actually, someone in the comments has informed us that the National Hurricane Center have increased Invest 92L to 50% in the next 5 days. So that's on the eastern side of the image here, off the coast of Africa there, now up to 50% from the National Hurricane Center.
Personally, I'm not...
Concerning to say the least that we already have that high of probabilities, and we're talking 5 days out here, with most of the initialization on the models. So the NHC probably has relatively fairly high confidence that the storm will develop, but in the next 5 days, as Nathan said, 50% chance of tropical cyclone development.
That's a decent chance already at such an early stage in this system's development. It's still got the whole ocean to traverse, and that will take 10 days or more. So, something else to watch. People saying it'll be an Irma 2.0. Now, steady on there. We're not in the early part of September. Might have agreed with you if you said if it was that time of year, but we are still rather early in the hurricane season, the end of July. August is where it usually ramps up. September is the peak, and then it ramps down in October. Will Gonzalo re-intensify of the East Coast? Hold on. Will Gonzalo re-intensify off the... Oh, it just disappeared. Okay, well that was a question. Something about the East Coast. I don't know.
Gonzalo disintegrate basically within 72 hours at this point. Recon's in both storms right now, actually. Good timing on the National Hurricane Center to get potentially a pass on both of them before the update time frame. I wouldn't be surprised, actually, if Gonzalo isn't even a tropical cyclone fully at the next advisory. Really
not sure.
And it probably is, but they're going to have to see and reevaluate the situation on their forecast. It could easily dissipate sooner than forecast right now, which is very fortunate.
Blasty the Penguin says, September is also when the Arctic sea ice minimum happens. That is true, and that's because the Northern Hemisphere oceans are the warmest in early to mid-September, not when people might think, which is July, August, when the land temperatures are usually hottest, but actually early September is when the sea surface temperatures are warmest, because there's always a delay with the sea surface temperatures, and they reach the cool minimum around February. So we're waiting for the latest information from the National Hurricane Center. They might hold off on the advisories for a while. I say hold off. I mean to say they'll be on time, because quite regularly the National Hurricane Center issue their advisories early. But for Gonzalo and Hanna at least, they'll probably do it very close to the hour mark. So that they can get as much information as they can from the recon planes. And do we have any updates on that?
Still approaching the storm at this point in time.
They're still not there?
Well, they are, but they're not in the center, I mean.
Okay.
They're like on the extreme outer fringes of where those tropical storm force winds are.
Hanna is quite a large system, to be fair, so it might take a little bit of time, and they might not even do a center pass before the next advisory comes. But I did see somewhere that there was a buoy that recorded 998 with 25 knot winds.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
interesting.
it wouldn't be surprising if they have to do the regular 8 p.m. update because it doesn't get there in time and they're running late and they just have to throw it out. And then you get a recon pass potentially showing a storm stronger than what the prior advisory says, and they put out a special update just to give a more accurate intensity rating. They've done that before, and they'll likely do it again in the future. So if that happens tonight, it wouldn't be too surprising. That's just protocol sometimes when a recon plane doesn't get there in time. You have to put some information out there.
Here's another interesting question. Could there be a 2005-like start with Dennis Emily-like systems just a bit later?
That's a really
Honestly?
interesting question, actually.
Anything's
Sorry, Elliot.
possible.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I wouldn't rule it out, honestly. Because given the setup, we've got a really warm main development region, we've got a really warm Caribbean, shear is generally lower than average. I would not rule out seeing some 2005-like systems in August, honestly.
I mean, it's really a situation of prepare for the worst, hope for the best. So far, we've been seeing the worst in storm formation numbers, but fortunately not in storm intensity to date. We got to hope that really stays the same. But unfortunately, right now, we're looking at the first likely hurricane landfall in the United States of the season within the next 24 hours or so.
And that is obviously on the forecast. And if you've not yet heard, a hurricane warning is in effect from Baffin Bay northward to Mesquite Bay in Texas.
Do we want to just go over all the active systems right now? Because there's warnings on all of them at the moment.
I guess, but they could update at any time.
That's true. Elliot, I don't know if you can screen share or grab those real quick, or Preston, you have those, but those would be great to share just to give a generalized update on.
Let's get some more questions first and see what people really want to know right now. Let's see, what do we have? Could Hanna become a major?
Highly unlikely.
I really doubt it.
You would have to really explosively intensify, which is highly unlikely.
You would need a near intensity records in terms of the speed of intensification for it to do that. It would need to go 65 miles an hour in strength gained in about 18 to 21 hours. Considering its close approach to land already, that would be extraordinarily unlikely. The consensus forecast as of a few hours ago was a minimal Category 1 storm, which is still a dangerous threat, very dangerous storm, but nothing up to that caliber, fortunately. If this had, say, 3 or 4 days, that would probably be more likely if the conditions in front of it were the same as it's facing for the next 24 hours, but we're not going to hype cast and say this is going to be something that's extraordinarily unlikely to do.
Let's have some rapid fire here. Could 92L reach Category 3 at least?
Always possible, but it's too far up, probably.
Does the recon do 2 passes in systems before they do another advisory?
Depends.
Make two at this
If
time.
they can.
In theory, but at least for this upcoming advisor, they're not going to have enough time to actually be able to do that.
Hanna is the earliest H name beating Harvey by 1 month. Could we see 2020 beating 2005 by a bit due to Hanna forming earlier than Harvey in 2005? Wasn't a month, was it?
Just a few days.
It was
Harvey was on the 3rd.
I think it was a month. Well, no.
It was in another month, but it wasn't a month.
It was in
apart.
another. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
10 days. 10 days.
I mean, we covered that earlier. I mean, I don't know what you guys actually think about that.
I mean, it really depends on the late season because, we talked about this during Faye, and it's still valid now. To see a lot of strong storms take advantage of favorable conditions and get very strong, that's where you really want the main development region firing up.
Think about this, actually. I've just had this thought. In terms of storm numbers and how unusual it's been, it's almost like 2005 in reverse.
In a way, yeah.
Because they had so many late season storms, and we've had so many early season storms. So I would think it would be very unlikely to have a busy late season as well. But if we did, then I guess we would be on track.
Yeah, I mean, to really get to 2005, you know, like I said, if you want a lot of strong storms, that's where you need the main development region and the Caribbean firing up on all cylinders. To really push that storm total to very extreme numbers, like we've seen year to date, that's where you want a lot of the subtropics forming or originally non-tropical systems becoming tropical cyclones. Those were 5 of the first 6 storms. The only one that wasn't that was Cristobal, which came from the Eastern Pacific Basin. So, I mean, you know, we can give barometers and estimates for how active parts of the basin might be later in the year, but we can't really reliably say, oh, this will definitely eclipse 2005 in named storms. It's a possibility in theory and in practice, but it's really a wait and see how conditions are and what storms are forming when and where.
Recon just updated. They've recorded so far in this new pass, they recorded 40-knot flight level winds, and looks like SFMR readings up to about 30 knots.
Would that be for Gonzalo?
This is for Hanna.
That sounds a bit low.
They're not quite at the center yet.
Yeah.
No, they're not yet. But it shows the wind field has been expanding as the storm continues to intensify.
Yeah, so how far from the center was that then?
About 93 west.
93 west.
93 west, center of the storm. It's definitely the last advisor.
About 93 west and 28 degrees north.
We're hacking away trying to figure out where that is.
Well, as of about 3 hours ago, the storm was at 94.3 degrees west. It's moved. It was moving at 10 miles an hour since then, so it's moved.
So that's a good, probably 80 miles from the center then.
Yeah. So definitely
being the. Go ahead, Strat.
I was just going to say that, it's just an indicator of an expanding wind field.
Definitely.
Tropical storm force sustained winds are occurring on the surface at 93 degrees west, and the center is beginning to approach 95 degrees west, although it's probably not quite there yet. That would indicate closer to 90 or 100 miles wind radius in the northeast quadrant. And considering, let me get the forecast advisory out really quick, that the maximum 34-knot wind field that they were forecasting was 70 nautical miles. It would likely already be past that, and that would have to cause adjustments in how they're forecasting where the worst impacts of tropical storm force winds would be impacting land.
Let's have some more rapid fire whilst we wait for those updates to come out. Here's a question from Hurricane Gaming. Didn't know the two could go together. If you guys use the Dvorak technique, what pattern would you give it?
Devon's the Dvorak expert.
Devon's the Dvorak guy. He's got a nickname, Dvorak Devon, in some quarters. And I'm not massively well versed on it either, but clearly it would be... It's banding right now, and I would imagine that the number would be something like a 3?
About 6 hours ago, we got a 3.5 from for Hanna.
That sounds about right.
Yep.
Have any of us been in a hurricane? Well, Isaac's about to be in a hurricane at this rate.
Well, I kind of was in the way with Harvey, but I guess that's more of a different story for a different day. But I'll just cut it short. When I went over here, I evacuated, of course, but my HQ received a peak gust of, I think it was, if I remember correctly, it was 87 or 88 miles per hour. But where I evacuated to, we received moderately strong tropical storm force winds and probably gusts up to maybe 70 miles an hour or so.
Wow. Could Douglas re-intensify?
It's trying to right now. I'll say that.
Not in the long term.
Yeah, it might see a brief spurt of getting stronger, but the overall trend should be a continuation downwards in intensity from here on. It's done a pretty good job at completing the eyewall replacement cycle, and clearing out a new eye. I'll definitely give it that. But it's entering less favorable sea surface temperatures for the next about 36 to 48 hours or so, which will likely contribute to the storm winding down in intensity slowly but surely over that time period as a whole. If it really has a strong flare-up of convection despite that, you could potentially see some brief re-intensification occur. But it would be very unlikely for the storm to, say, get back to Category 4 status, for example.
Now, someone's asked to see infrared on Hanna, so let's see if we can get that up on the screen. There it is. So that's how it's looking on the infrared right now. Cloud tops ballooning on the eastern and southern side of the storm. The black areas there denote approximately minus 70-degree cloud tops and lower temperatures than that. That signals just how high those cloud tops are shooting up. So the higher the cloud tops, the more... I want to use the word energy. I know I used it before, but the more energy there is inside the cyclone, the more precipitation amounts are occurring under it, most likely, and probably equates to higher winds, not all the time, but usually. So the storm's intensifying in a nutshell, looking at that imagery just there.
Yep.
Now let's go back to Isaac's place. What's the latest looking out?
Just again, probably some occasional gusts, maybe up to 20, maybe 25 miles per hour. Sustained probably at about 10, maybe 15 miles per hour now. Rain is, for the most part, off to my west and south, and that's pretty much about it. Oh, and also, one more thing I forgot to mention. Way earlier in the stream, you were wondering how far I was away from the center line of Tropical Storm Hanna when it was making landfall. I just checked a few minutes ago, and I'm about 30 miles away from the center line of the cone.
Oh, wow, okay.
You're 30 miles to the north of it, right? Or
South.
Like,
I mean, yeah, north. I mean,
Okay.
yeah. I don't know why I said south. Excuse me.
Yeah. I mean, fortunately, if you look at the National Hurricane Center forecast, that would mean less rain for that specific area, potentially. But the odds of higher winds are obviously on the northern side, so...
I'll keep you guys posted, but
Yeah.
that's it for me.
We were getting a couple questions about Gonzalo earlier. It's the other active system in the Atlantic.
Yes.
People were asking if they could re-intensify a bit from here on out. Recon's about to get a center pass on it. And the National Hurricane Center has always been trying to say it might intensify or re-intensify a bit. The small storms like this are prone to rapid fluctuations in intensity.
They're also prone to dying off, though.
That's true, and that might be what we're seeing right now. So, the National Hurricane Center kept calling for at least minor re-intensification to some degree, but as we keep going on, and the storm looks worse and worse, it becomes a bit less likely that continues to occur.
Now I believe I can bring to you the latest imagery rapid scan now of Douglas. Well, there is an image. That's wonderful.
Hey, better than nothing, I guess.
Wonder why that isn't animating. Well, there it is. That was a nice fleeting look at Douglas. We'll try and get that animated. Get it working. Not sure why that didn't work.
I mean, regardless, you can just take that shot, acknowledge it is definitely a powerful tropical cyclone. It compared to this morning when the eye was completely obscured, just based on raw satellite appearance, it looks better if you just take a look at visible imagery. But it probably hasn't intensified back since then, which is also fortunate.
That is moving, of course, to cooler seas.
What wind speed and pressure does Hanna have based on satellite estimates? We're about to get a recon pass, so I'm sure the team's going to light up when that happens. So we'll be able to exact number pretty soon from actual data coming in from hurricane hunters. So don't worry about estimates for too longer. We'll have pure data points coming in.
To my understanding, the lowest pressure so far recorded was from a buoy, and it was 997.3 millibars. so
Yep.
far before not counting in a recon, because recon's going to be there and be there quite short with a few minutes, not a few minutes, but about an hour or so.
And compared to the 5 p.m. advisory that said 999 mil, still a sign of intensification ongoing. I'll very eager, and I'm sure we all are, to see what the reconnaissance aircraft gets, hopefully within the next 30 minutes or so, of what the new intensity, or now current intensity, of Tropical Storm Hanna is.
All right, I'm pleased to say we got it working. An animated look at Douglas right now. This is what a mature hurricane looks like. A clearly defined eye, which is now continuing to clear out almost fully at this point. And this is the storm that is 2 days away from striking the Hawaiian Islands. And that's one of 3 tropical cyclones that are currently active that we're having to monitor very closely at this time, because all 3 of them are land threats.
Update on recon, the new frame came in, and for some reason they're turning back around to the east.
Update on Douglas is out from the Central Pacific Hurricane Center, and they've kept it at 115 miles per hour and a pressure of 967 millibars. The latest position is 17.4 north, 144.3 degrees west. That's now 1,165 kilometers. That's 725 miles away from Hilo, east-southeast, 930 miles east-southeast of Honolulu. It's currently moving west-northwest at 18 miles per hour. The warnings stay the same. That's a hurricane watch, I should say, in effect for Hawaii County and Maui County, including Maui, Lanai, Molokai, and Kahulaui. Interest elsewhere in the Hawaiian Islands should monitor the progress of this system.
Isaac, you said something about recon, I think, real quick, and if someone can actually screen the recon plane,
I
graphic.
think I might have it. Sorry. I think I might have it up there, Nathan. I don't know if it's showing on there, because it might be showing TT data. But it looks like, in my theory, they're turning east, and they're going to get the eastern side of the storm, and then they're going to do a diagonal, and then likely go into the center of the storm. That's my opinion. I don't know if that's going to happen. Maybe they're turning back, but in my opinion, it's more likely that they're going to turn south shortly and get the measurements on the eastern side of the storm.
Yeah. I mean, we see these data points, update every 10 to 15 minutes or so usually, and we get to see the position and where it went, recently. I think most of us were expecting initially they just go dive for a pass from the northeast to southwest of the center to see the exact intensity. So I'm sure there's general confusion about, but hopefully that's right, and there isn't any real issue ongoing that will require them to just completely turn around and leave the storm without getting a center fix and proper intensification update data.
We're here for another hour at the end of this one with more commentary, and after that we'll be throwing it back to our automated feed, which is on another link, youtube.com/force13/live. That's there all the time when we're not broadcasting properly, like speaking. There's always something to look at on there, and 24/7 music playing on there as well. So, Strat, you were going to say something else.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and I'm pretty sure you still have that recon source available, is that the Gonzalo one is actually about to get a full center pass as well. And it's going to be very interesting to see what they say, because so far, at least, there is no tropical storm force sustained winds on the northwestern side of the storm at all, which is mostly to be expected based on the current look of the system.
You need to see the eastern side.
Exactly. If the southeastern side and the northeastern side have nothing, this very likely could potentially not be a tropical storm if that's the case, at least in intensity anymore.
Have you got that, Preston, now?
Yeah, I should have that up.
Yeah, it looks like they're about to cross the center on it, and they're getting minimum pressure at flight level of about 1,010 to 1,011 millibars right now, at least.
Pretty poor.
Yep, still weakening for sure. Someone asked if we have access to infrared satellite imagery for Douglas rather than just visible imagery.
For Douglas?
Yeah.
Oh, well. Oh, there, well, there's the visible once again. I can get that for you. It will take a minute or two, so we'll throw back to infrared on Hanna right now whilst I go get that as well.
Yeah, and someone's asking a question. That's a bit of a climatological one. Is it typical for hurricanes to affect Hawaii this early in the season?
It can happen. Wasn't Iselle a July storm? Or was it August?
Yeah, I think it was early August, if memory serves me right. Like August 4th when it made landfall, I believe.
It can happen at any time of year, really, I would think. I mean, a bit less likely in winter. It's not very likely at all in the first place, but I would say July, August, September, and October, probably the main months.
Yep. Let's see. And someone's asking, I think the infrared satellite imagery, once we get it on Douglas, a good barometer to this. How is Douglas handling the sea surface temperatures, which are less favorable for it right now? We'll see it again. You've already seen the visible imagery. The eye is looking pretty nice, especially compared to this morning when it was completely obscured. But those cloud tops aren't firing up to the same levels that they were yesterday and a day and a half ago, which is fortunate. Means the storm likely won't be able to re-intensify significantly, or if at all, and just maintain its current pace or continue a downtrend. But for the time being, it's looking to potentially try to maintain itself.
Small update on. Oh, go ahead.
No, go.
I was just going to say small update on recon. Apparently, according to Nelson, the reason why they're turning back, looking at the map there, is because they're descending down lower into the atmosphere to collect more accurate data of Hanna.
There's Douglas now on the infrared imagery, and very nice to look at least. A photogenic storm, although the cloud top's waning a little bit there. Just about -70s on the northern, western and the eastern side. And as you can see, there's a gap there on the northern side of the eye where the storm is got a fracture in it. So that's a sign of a storm that's past its peak. But it's still got quite a deep eye, and it looked really good yesterday when National Hurricane Center ran with 130 miles per hour Category 4 when it peaked, although we think the number might be a little bit higher. But nonetheless, it is weakening at this point, low-end Category 3, but it still could pose a hurricane threat to the Hawaiian Islands. Back with the visible on Hanna, and we're still waiting for the 7 PM update. That's due very shortly. And the Gonzalo update is out. 8 PM Atlantic Standard Time. It's 40 miles per hour. A pressure of 1008 millibars. 10 degrees north, 56.3 west. Barbados has discontinued the tropical storm warning. So a tropical storm warning now currently exists in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Tobago, and Grenada.
That is a massive shift, really, to be honest. 8 hours ago, Barbados had a tropical storm warning and hurricane watch in effect for them, and now they have absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
Yep, nothing at all. They probably won't even get rain from this at this point, to be honest. Just some potential rougher currents around the island. So, a major change from what they were anticipating at the governmental level there, from even just a few hours ago. And that's very fortunate, to say the least. There's a valid question. I think it's worth talking about a little bit about Hanna. Someone's asking, they said, I'm sorry to bring this back, but people are talking about Hanna having an eye. What can we say about that?
Did you say Hanna?
Yeah, for Hanna.
Well, you look at the satellite imagery once again, and we can throw up the infrared and latest 1 minute imagery there. There are some flare-ups occurring, but really, if you're looking out for an eye, you won't see it properly until later.
Radar is showing indications of an eye-like feature too. I must note as well, but quite disorganized on radar.
And it's hard to tell because it's quite far away from the radars at the moment, so we're only getting low quality edge of scope imagery there. But you can certainly try and follow the rotations to where the center is there.
Yeah, and for the person asking, is this a Category 1 already? It's very likely it would still have to take significant time to ramp up to that over the next 24 hours. It could be slightly stronger than the prior advisory, but we don't have the data to really confirm that yet. The National Hurricane Center, they just gave out their 8 p.m. update on it, 7 p.m. Central Time. Down 1 millibar to 998 millibars, and 50 miles an hour maximum sustained wind still, but that's mostly because they don't have the data pass yet to really give us all the information that we really need to.
Yeah, that was expected. They've not really made any changes. It's currently 190 miles east of Corpus Christi and 195 miles east-northeast of Port Mansfield, Texas. 50 miles an hour, as you said. Moving west still at 10 miles per hour. The headline reads that Hanna is forecast to make landfall as a hurricane in South Texas tomorrow. Conditions expected to deteriorate overnight. Isaac, starting to get a little dark where you are.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just been doing that throughout the day here. I think as just clouds have been just passing over my HQ here. I haven't really got much in the way of rain except earlier this morning. I think it was like around 9 p.m., 9 in the morning my time. I got some rainfall from this, but other than that, I've been relatively dry here. Mostly it's just been kind of just windy and gusty here.
Personally, I'm not seeing the rapid intensification for this storm, but I do think it could gradually intensify up to Category 1.
Yeah. I mean, regardless of its exact intensity at landfall, though, we're still looking at a significant storm that's going to bring heavier rainfall totals, particularly in South Texas, localized up to 12 inches, regional 4 to 8 likely, potentially even 6 to 10 in a wide swath of the National Hurricane Center and the Weather Prediction Center have lined out. So it's definitely a concerning storm for this region that they do need to monitor closely. Fortunately, and we went over this a bit earlier, the area where some of that worst rainfall might end up occurring is in a more sparsely populated region, but that really doesn't discount the risk for the people that live there or people to the north of where the center of the storm ends up making landfall. They're going to have to deal with higher surge, stronger winds, and still significant rainfall that can trigger flash flooding.
It looks like we also have the new Recon Pass, and it looks like Recon is turning north for some reason. Definitely something that I don't think anyone really expected. It might be because it's descending, but interesting to say the least.
Yeah, I'm hearing
decline in altitude.
I'm hearing
something to do with it. They were priorly at about 3,400 meters in elevation. They've gone all the way down close to about 400 or 500 meters in elevation now, which is down from a little while ago when they were over 1,000 meters. So they're really going down to try to get as close to the ground information as they possibly can, it seems.
From what I'm hearing, I believe they're going down because they're trying to find a new way to enter the storm because of the deep convection was deemed too risky to fly into for Hanna. So they put in the safety first of the recon crew, and they're going to try another way to get into the storm.
That's interesting. Let's go back to one of the other radar sites, see if we can get a better fix on the center of this storm.
Houston is going to be a lot better.
Yeah, as you can see, it is not much better, but you can still see the storm center. To be honest, Corpus Christi might be slightly better, I'm not sure. They're about the same quality when you go towards the center of the storm, both of them near the edge of range. So it just looks like a bit of a mess at the minute, but you can again see the rotation, and it's hard to discern from this whether there's a distinct eye feature, but maybe Elliot has some better imagery.
I do have Houston radar pulled up, so we can take a look at that maybe.
Yeah, so there's another
As Nathan-
view, and that view to me looks a bit better, so talk us through it.
As Nathan said, of course, it's right at the edge of radar imagery, so it's not going to be the best radar, but it's what we have to work with at the moment. Right now, you can sort of definitely see the rotation, and you can sort of see the I-like feature that people are saying. It could be right around here. We don't know for sure yet, but the center is right around.
That looks about right.
Around here, from what it looks like. And you can sort of see the outer bands that are giving some showers and thunderstorms to parts of coastal Texas, down from Corpus Christi all the way up through Houston. So you can sort of expect to see those outer bands keep moving through and give you probably some rainfall heading into tonight and tomorrow.
Yep. I believe we're now joined by David. Are you there? I think he just went away.
I am here, and I just popped in to let everyone know that we're on the Facebook page, and a special hello to the viewers in Australia and the Philippines. And
of course you had to mention that, because David's in Australia. Yes.
Yes, and I've been alerted
No,
to...
please, we're very happy to have everyone on board.
Yeah, but... and I should put a plug in for the US channel, Nathan. We are simulcasting on the US channel, and Tim, who's our US team leader, has a NOAA radio currently active on that channel.
So that's another place to look. If you've not seen our channel before, perhaps, just head over to our YouTube channel page and you'll see a listing on the right hand side somewhere of some of our other channels, regional channels, the US channel in particular. They most likely will be running some more localized coverage for Hanna in particular, and they do a very good job independently as well. And of course, at the end of this hour now, we will be finishing the commentary and we'll bring it back to our live automated feed, which is still running in the background on our live page. But there we have it. Any more news from Recon at all?
It doesn't look like the latest frame has came in yet, but
Okay.
I'll be monitoring it as we progress.
Let's take some more questions then. Who do we have right now? How many inches of rain is Hawaii going to get from Douglas? I checked earlier, we're looking at probably about 3 inches if the storm does scrape the northern islands. If it does move further south over the islands properly, then you'll be looking at quite a bit more than 3 inches. Obviously, given that we are talking about the Hawaiian Islands, they are a big rain magnet, given how mountainous they are when storms come to visit. And we saw with Lane in 2018 delivered a remarkable amount of rain. Was it over 50 inches to one location? And that didn't even make landfall, so...
The rain one from the latest GFS forecast run has about 2 to 3 inches as a maximum, but you're going to see localized higher because of those mountain ranges, and the GFS is a bit north of the current envelope as well. So if I were to pull up, say the icon, that model is giving some areas, particularly the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, a bit higher rain totals than that for the time being.
This again on your screen is the latest imagery of Hurricane Douglas, just so that we don't get confused between which storm's which. This is Douglas, which is the one that's headed towards Hawaii, likely to arrive within 48 hours. Hawaii would be around, 900 miles? Or a little less to the northeast, west-northwest. I knew that would happen one day. West-northwest of the storm, and it's headed that way, and likely to skim just north. Still looking really good. Category 3 status. And then we've got Hanna, of course, which is the one we've mainly got the spotlight on during tonight's stream. And you can see again the cloud tops really blowing up on the eastern and southern side of the centre. The north and western side looking rather bare actually, especially away from the storm centre. So there's no massive rain totals accumulating on land yet. But as the National Hurricane Centre said in their latest advisory, at 7 PM Central, is that conditions will deteriorate overnight, and I fully expect that we'll be back online with more commentary first thing tomorrow morning.
Going back to the rainfall amounts on Douglas, it looks like the Hawaiian Forecast Office from the National Weather Service is predicting that areas near Honolulu and Hilo, an additional 6 to 10 inches of rain, according to the latest tropical cyclone information they have there. So potentially,
well, they know better than the models, so there you go.
Yeah, significant rains.
So that there is Douglas once again. I did lose my train of thought, though. I was trying to figure out where we were going to go next. Any more recon news? I just see you looking at that page once more. Or IKEA's, actually.
Actually, interestingly, if you want to look at the Gonzalo reconnaissance aircraft, they have not found any tropical storm force winds on the southeastern quadrant so far, and they're well through the main burst of convection now.
That's bad. Bad news for Gonzalo. It may no longer be with us.
Yeah, I mean, I think it still has a center of circulation, based on the reconnaissance data, but the aircraft is through that main little bit of convection that's still associated with the system, and they only found flight level winds of like 10 to 15 knots at that level. No point there did it even reach 20 knots at flight level. So this very well may be, unless they catch something in the next frame or up on the northeastern side that isn't anticipated, a tropical depression now rather than a tropical storm, which is extremely fortunate considering the forecasts yesterday and 2 days ago were calling for this to pass through the southern Windward Islands as a strong tropical storm, potentially minimal hurricane.
This imagery should be more up to date now. Here we go. So there you can see what's actually transpired. A couple of hours have gone since that was last up to date. There's a little flare-up that's still occurring in Gonzalo, so, well, we'll see. And again, you can see on the right-hand side that Atlantic wave that's emerged off the coast of Africa. That's now 50% from the National Hurricane Center in the next 5 days.
Yeah, people were asking about it a little bit, actually, a little earlier, if you want to go over it in a bit more detail. I know there's a lot of curiosity when a new tropical system may...
The wave?
In the near future. Yeah, the wave.
So, well, there it is on the right-hand side of your screen, south of Cape Verde, moving west of there now. Looks like it will be battling with some dry air, the Saharan dust coming off the coast of Africa again. Where would we be if not for the Sahara Desert, by the way? So, models are suggesting that something will probably come out of this. It'll be a much larger storm if it was to develop into one, much larger than Gonzalo. And look at it already, it's about twice the size at least, and that has some, the imagery is a bit distorted there as we're looking out towards the limb. But ECMWF was very curious with this storm, developing it into a significant tropical cyclone, probably a hurricane moving through the Lesser Antilles, Puerto Rico, and then off towards the Bahamas. That was just one run, and that could change, and given that this thing hasn't even formed yet, it probably will change, but that's something that one of the models suggested. But right now, all we can tell you is 50% in the next 5 days, and if it did affect the Lesser Antilles, that's probably still 8 or 9 days away.
Honestly, something that would probably be useful to talk about as well, and I think Isaac can go into great detail about this because he's close to the potential impact zone of Tropical Storm Hanna whenever he's available, would just be some of the preparations that he's been taking to get ready for this, along with, preparations that he's taken in the past for other systems, especially for people that may be located in that general area. Someone that, is much more of an enthusiast in tracking these systems and has been through events like this before can be very helpful. In the meantime, though, since the updates have came out, I think we can go over all the current watches and warnings if you want to do that real quick.
Me or you?
I can pull them up really quick on each of them if you need me to.
Well, I've got Hanna here, so if you could get the other ones up.
Right.
So we've got a storm surge warning that's currently in effect. That's the most important one there because storm surge is probably going to be the main threat from this storm, along with rainfall. Baffin Bay to Sargent, Texas. Hurricane warning for Baffin Bay to Mesquite Bay in Texas. Tropical storm warning for the mouth of the Rio Grande to Baffin Bay and Mesquite Bay to San Luis Pass, Texas. Storm surge warning means that there is a danger of life-threatening inundation from rising water moving inland from the coastline during the next 24 hours in the indicated locations. For a depiction of areas at risk, please see the National Weather Service Storm Surge Watch and Warning graphic at hurricanes.gov. This is a life-threatening situation. Persons located within these areas should take all necessary actions to protect life and property from rising water and the potential for other dangerous conditions.
And Nathan, I don't want to interrupt.
Yes.
I just want to interrupt you here. It does look like we have some news on the recon. It does look like they are assisting in a search and rescue mission as of this time. So that is why they are flying so low and going to the ground. So that is why the update that we have confirmed.
Do we have anything that we can show about that?
There's a couple tweets going on through a couple meteorologists that have been explaining the situation that's going on, really. But that would really explain kind of the erratic pattern of them shifting down very close to the surface and moving north away from the actual center of the storm. So hopefully, if that's the case, everything works out absolutely fine for the people that are at risk right now, and that it does not end up being something extremely significant, but definitely a concern.
Just like Lorenzo, and they have saved lives doing this before, you know?
Absolutely.
So we'll see what results of that as we get more information. So, is that confirmed?
It does look like an official meteorologist has confirmed that at this time.
Okay, as soon as we get more information on that, we'll let you know. Hurricane warning obviously still in effect. It means that hurricane conditions are expected somewhere within the warning area, in this case within the next 24 hours. Preparations to protect life and property should be rushed to completion. Tropical storm warning means that tropical storm conditions are expected within 24 hours.
We do have confirmation on that. It does look like the person that did respond with a tweet is a part of the National Oceanic Administration. So yes, this is likely confirmed that they are doing a search and rescue mission via Michael Fisher at the Hurricane Research Division.
Is that, and that's all the specifics we have right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the storm on the best radar we have right now, which isn't admittedly the best, but there's obviously another situation going on which is diverting the recon plane, so we might not get the information that we're looking for, but obviously there's something much more important, and that's the chance to save lives right in the here and now. So let's see if we've got any more comments coming in. Let's see. Barbados has discontinued its tropical storm warning. We did mention that at the top of the hour. And Strat, have you got the other info?
Yeah, I actually got the current watches and warnings in place for Gonzalo right now. They're much more limited than they were this morning, 9 hours ago. But right now, there's a tropical storm warning in effect. Actually, this is data. That's the 21Z1. I need to get the advisory real quick.
Well, it's the same except Barbados.
Yeah, it's tropical storm warning in effect for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Tobago, and Grenada and its dependencies. So a bit more constrained than earlier today in terms of what warnings are currently in effect, and that means tropical storm conditions are expected within the warning area, likely within 24 hours. And I want to go over the hurricane watches that are in place for Douglas at this point in time as well. They're the same as a couple hours ago. But for anyone that wasn't here earlier, there's a hurricane watch in effect for the Big Island of Hawaii, and then also Maui County, including Maui, Lanai, Molokai, and Kahului right now. And I would not be surprised if, the cone doesn't change too much in the next 12 hours or so, that you start to see some watches extend further up the Hawaiian island chain as well.
Probably not for a little bit, but yeah, eventually.
I'd give it another at least 12 hours right now, at least.
now I understand why they mentioned the warnings being discontinued in Barbados. That's because our bottom readout hasn't updated just yet. Getting onto that just now. But again, we're looking at the tropical zone there, and let's head on back to more imagery of Hanna. And in the infrared channel, once again, you can see the convection still flaring up in progress right now. Any thoughts on this?
Well, the cloud tops have actually been fairly cold. We're seeing negative 70s and maybe a few isolated events of negative 80s. So this thing does have intense convection. The question is, how organized will it become before it makes landfall, which it is still projected to be a hurricane.
I can see that happening, definitely. I just don't think it's going to be rapid intensification.
Yeah, I mean, the general expectation, it's what the National Hurricane Center is saying. It's probably going to just leg up bit by bit over the next 24 hours or so into landfall and barely become a hurricane before it makes landfall. Regardless, honestly, though, if it's a 70-mile tropical storm or an 80-mile-an-hour hurricane or 75-mile-an-hour hurricane, that won't vastly change the exact impacts that you should be looking for. It's really just a categorization change when you get to, the exact minute details like that. So if you're in the area, don't put all your weight on your preparations on the exact category forecast that the system will end up being. Take the proper preparations based on what you're seeing from your local weather station about exact impacts to your specific location, regardless of the peak wind speed expected of the system.
And people are saying, well, there's a question by Hurricane 7. What are our predictions for Hanna? Not NHC, they say specifically. But I don't see any reason to disagree with them in the forecast. At all, really.
Yeah.
Not really at all. I mean, you look at the system, it doesn't have much time to landfall. It'd still have to get significantly stronger in the next 18 to 24 hours before landfall. And to be fair, 25 an hour in 24 hours, as the current forecast says, is a very significant amount for a storm to do in that period. It's technically 5 miles an hour, 5 knots off from, what's the technical designation for rapid intensification. So just because it isn't going to explosively become a major hurricane doesn't mean that that isn't something that's, quite notable to do. And it doesn't happen very often with the storm this close to land where it ramps up that quickly in intensity anyways. So it is a significant event to watch and monitor regardless.
We also have new information from Isaac. He is also saying that people are trying to board up, looks like construction material, maybe being brought up to protect windows from Hanna. Definitely a good idea to prevent property damage.
Completely.
And there again, you can see the live feed from Isaac's location in Corpus Christi. That's how things are looking right now. Can't really see much of the skies, but you can certainly see the trees swaying just a little bit, getting breezy over there. Conditions expected to deteriorate overnight. Until then, probably won't see too much on that webcam.
Yeah, I'm almost certain this webcam will be much more active tomorrow than it will be tonight overall.
If Isaac's still there and doesn't decide to move somewhere.
That's true.
I don't know what his plans are. He is under the hurricane warning.
That's true, actually. I will say with the trends of Hanna, particularly over the past 6 to 12 hours now, this, even though, extended to the west of the center, has nowhere near as much convection as the east side does. The actual center of the storm and, close proximity to it is looking much more organized and symmetrical than we were talking about this morning. So the storm has definitely been continuing to organize and improve in structure as we've watched it march slowly but surely towards the Texas coastline.
And that it does. We've covered a lot of the same ground at the minute, so I guess we're just getting our bearings again, but let's go back to that satellite imagery. This is in real time. The latest image on this, well, I don't actually know, but usually it's only a few minutes old. So that's the latest look at Hanna, which really seems to be building on the eastern side. Western side, not so much. We'll see whether that carries over. And then compare that with Hurricane Douglas, which is still building in, trying to build in that eye wall and go for a second peak. It looked much better yesterday, but it still looks rather decent today. Minimal category 3, and that is 2 days away from Hawaii now. And then Gonzalo is not really worth looking at. But we'll see if Recon get any more details on that.
Gonzalo's got its last hope right now. When the Recon plane's going to the northeastern quadrant right now, it's its last hope, really. No tropical storm force winds found in the southeastern quadrant. A bit stronger heading up just on the Peary side. We're getting some flight level winds above 20 knots, barely. But if there isn't tropical storm force winds in that northeastern quadrant, then this is very likely no longer a tropical storm strength system. And that's a bullet dodge for some of these islands, especially considering 24 to 48 hours ago, this was forecast to potentially be a moderate Category 1 hurricane as it moved through.
Especially when you consider that.
Massive upside for the region to really get a shot missed from this. And if you really look at the satellite imagery zoomed, you don't even need to zoom in that much as long as you just see the general region. It's a very small system. It's really only one blob of concentrated convection left with it right now. Yeah. If you were to overlay this on top of Hanna, it would look absolutely minuscule in comparison.
I've been trying to get a closer view of Gonzalo, but not very forthcoming. At least not with the tools I've got right now, so we'll just leave it at that. But compared to Hanna, Gonzalo is about maybe a tenth of the size.
Yeah, so it is tiny. Which is, again, a plus side, because if you placed Hanna where it is right now, regardless of the exact place it went, most of the southern Windward Islands would likely be seeing some sort of impact from a tropical cyclone. But when it's as small as Gonzalo and looking to continue to weaken right now, we could be in a situation where islands that a few hours ago were expected to potentially get hurricane force conditions end up getting no rain and maybe only a little bit of gusty wind, no non-tropical storm force sustained either. So a massive turnaround to the upside in expectations for conditions for those regions.
And that's great news for those islands. It looks like this dodged a major bullet here. So Gonzalo looks to be on the way out, thankfully.
And just to clarify, we were talking about Gonzalo there. If you've just tuned in, I know that Hanna was appearing on the imagery. That still is a massive threat and increasing still at this time. Hurricane warnings out there, but Gonzalo again there on the screen near the bottom center of the image. Looks like, as Preston said, on its way out.
At this rate, unless something happens that isn't really expected in that northeastern quadrant, where there's generally less convection on the southeast side, we'll be looking at Tropical Depression Gonzalo at 11 p.m. Atlantic time, so in about 2.5 hours or so, which is a very positive change, especially because it means the weaker it gets right now, the less organized it gets, the less likely it will be to re-intensify at all and reattain tropical storm status if it actually fully weakens to a tropical depression, which means that the southern Windward Islands, if they get really lucky, might not even end up getting any tropical storm force sustained winds from Gonzalo. So massive plus side compared to what we were looking at even yesterday, really.
How small is Gonzalo compared to Marco? We're not getting into that territory yet.
Yeah, I also we'd have to wait and see if it's even a tropical storm first before we could really make that full comparison. Because if it's a tropical depression, I don't think we can make a proper comparison. So it's a wait and see right now on that.
That's an interesting question. If Gonzalo was bigger, would it have survived the dust?
Probably.
It's a good question. It probably would have been able to, if it was a larger system, be able to have more dry air really come into it to destroy it the same way. But considering just the complete obliteration of the structure, it's increasingly safe to say that even a system quite a bit larger than what Gonzalo has been would definitely have been hampered significantly by the dry air that's impeding it right now.
And a question about its wind field, Hanna's wind field, that is. How large is it? Tropical storm force winds, according to the National Hurricane Center, extend outward up to 60 miles from the center. You can see that little shape on the map here, that green, weird-looking thing. That is the wind field of the storm right now, according to the National Hurricane Center. So, if you've been wondering what that is the wind field. Tropical storm force winds anywhere and possibly everywhere within that green zone.
And just a quick update on the recon. I don't know if they've actually, finished what they were doing on that potential search and rescue mission, but they look to maybe be heading back a bit to the west right now. They're very close to the water, though, still at about 300 meters above sea level, so they're treading very close to the surface right now.
Strat, I think what they're doing is they're going to try to grid the sea level there, going back and forth in lines there to try to find, hopefully, and return those people in danger safe. So all of our hopes go to finding the safe recovery of the people that may have been lost at sea.
Absolutely. I mean, they're pretty close to shore, so I'm sure there's multiple, not just this one recon plane, but other systems in right now looking to find the ship in distress or right now. So hopefully that works out perfectly for them, although, obviously it's not really a good situation when you're in distress where a hurricane hunter has to divert their path off to help you lost at sea, basically.
But they do respond to that kind of thing, and they actually, for quite a few years now, they've been using satellites to help find people lost at sea as well. That's actually saved people too.
Yeah, as technology gets more and more advanced, it's really a brilliant thing. So especially when it's coming off to save lives.
More questions then, please send them in. Start your message with Force 13 all in text if you have any questions for us. Should Hanna be at least 60 miles per hour right now? I think a lot of people want your thoughts in the room here on how strong you think it is.
Best track
It doesn't look bad, but I think it looks strong enough to be 60 at this point.
You think it's strong enough?
Well, I guess. I mean, it's so hard to say. It's looking good right now.
It is.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they really don't get a recon. They end up 50 miles because the continued improvement in instruction organization. They're going to basically be left at the National Hurricane Center with satellite estimates unless this manages to find this ship and make sure it's safe and still have enough gas left in the tank to get a pass or two in. So it's, they're doing obviously the right thing, making sure to try the best to save lives right now in this potential distress call. But we don't really have all the data necessary.
Thing is, though, we're looking at the satellite imagery. It looks better than Hurricane Barry.
That's true.
But we know it's not as strong as Hurricane Barry was.
Or Hurricane Bertha.
And that's why, the satellite only goes so far. And to be honest, you'd probably want to look more at radar to get an idea of the structure of the storm, if it was a little bit close to the radar site, so that we could see how well defined or how well structured that eye might be if there is one.
Yeah, and that's true. And also just an update on the recon. Full confirmation that it's been called into a search and rescue in the outer bands of the system, and that it will not be doing its scheduled investigation of Hanna. So we're not going to be getting any recon pass from this particular plane.
Right.
At this time period. So, I wouldn't be surprised at all if the National Hurricane Center ups this in 2.5 hours to 60 miles an hour sustained winds. The system definitely improved in structure a bit more since we started this live commentary section about 2.5 hours ago. So it makes sense. if they were to do such a thing. But we just don't really have all the raw data points to have right now, unfortunately.
I believe we've now got Ryan with us. I believe it's your first time here. I don't know if you can hear us. But he's also joined us at this point. So, a revolving door with our team as always. Ryan?
Hello.
Good evening. Any thoughts on Hanna?
Definitely a dangerous situation for Texas, especially with the hurricane warnings now in effect.
Yeah, absolutely. That continues to increase as well. Is rain going to be the biggest threat from Hanna? Is a question. It could well be.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not in the isolated area that's expected to get hurricane-force sustained winds and stronger gusts, like Isaac potentially right now under a hurricane warning, and he said that the maximum wind gust expected right now on the forecast for his location is 85 miles an hour, which is a very significant threat, especially when you're seeing sustained stronger winds, would very likely be rainfall. It's always important to mention, even though a lot of these storms are measured by the amount of wind speeds that they're producing, that the single largest cause of death related to tropical cyclones is related to rain and flooding and storm surge and flash flooding as well. So wind causes about 10%, 90% comes from those other factors related to flooding. So when the National Hurricane Center is saying that they're expecting a significant swath of southern Texas to see 6 to 10 inches with localized up to 12 inches, and I wouldn't be surprised if this trend continues to up that a little bit more. It's a very dangerous situation for the people, particularly in that location when they're talking about flooding.
Oh, hey, here we go. Here's some news. The ATCF, which is the automated system by the US Navy, has come out saying Hanna at 60 miles per hour. So it's likely the National Hurricane Center will follow that, given the absence of recon.
Yep.
So that might be a question answered about whether it's 60 miles an hour or not. And I would agree that 60 miles an hour seems about fair. Maybe even 65 looking at satellite.
Yeah,
and they've gone with a pressure of 996.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense based on the trends that we're seeing, really. It's kind of a wait and see to see if the National Hurricane Center will go exactly with that, as they sometimes do when they don't have, a recon pass.
They're more likely to in the absence of other information.
Exactly. If it continues to organize and look even better, they could always decide, we're going to go 5 miles an hour higher, but it's more likely than not because of the ATCF data that they're going to go with 60 miles an hour.
It would seem that way to me. That's what I would do anyway.
Yep.
And I imagine that's what they'll be doing, if for nothing else, to play it safe and warn people that the storm, we don't know for sure, but that it could be getting stronger.
Yeah, I mean, in their last advisory, in their forecast discussion, they were saying that they could be a bit potentially conservative, in some of the future estimates right now. So, that was kind of the gist when we weren't having recon last night a bit. Came out a bit stronger this morning, and we're potentially seeing a similar thing right now, except we don't have any reconnaissance in to give us the exact data points that we want.
Yes, so that's literally where we're at right now.
Yeah. Someone's asking, what is the chance of Gonzalo's remains, because forecast to disintegrate, reforming in the Gulf? I would like to clarify right now, because, forecasts for this were much higher yesterday and 2 days ago, and, we've seen videos and stuff, potentially pointing towards the United States down the line, that based on our current trend that we're seeing with the system dying out, if recon doesn't find tropical storm force winds in the northeastern quadrant, this isn't even a tropical storm.
If this dies out, Strat, the most you can expect in late July is for the remnants to maybe become a tropical storm in the far southern Gulf of Mexico and hit Mexico.
Yeah, and from the model consensus that we've been seeing, that won't even happen, which is fortunate for just land masses as a whole, because
it's probably going to enhance rainfall over Central America.
Yeah, down the line, yeah.
down the line.
The general consensus that most of the core convection associated with right now will get ripped apart as it moves into the central Caribbean Sea. But the associated circulation or whatever energy is left when it gets towards Central America could cause some enhanced rainfall. If you're trying to track where the center of this system might be down the line, once you get about to 3 to 5 days, it's expected to still be very far south.
Yeah.
The day 3 point right now, it's still expected to be barely north of central or of actually being inland South America. So it's not going to just randomly decide with the current steering patterns that it'll say, screw you to them and move up into the Gulf of Mexico instead of just moving into Central America.
Okay, do we have a wide view water vapor satellite of Gonzalo? I probably could get one somewhere. I'll see what we can do. Is there a chance that 92L will become a hurricane? Now, those who are unfamiliar, 92L is the wave that's just emerged off the coast of Africa. National Hurricane Center give it a 50% chance of forming in the next 5 days. And I would say the chances of it becoming a hurricane are not to be ignored, but we can't be confident about it yet. I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts.
I would say it's too far out to forecast the strength of this 92L.
Yep, exactly. Because even though the National Hurricane Center says it's a 50% chance of development, first off, that means in the next 5 days there's a 50% chance it doesn't develop. And even if it does become a tropical storm, intensity is the hardest thing to forecast for cyclones. So it really wouldn't be prudent of us or responsible to go out and say, this thing that is a tropical wave that only has a 50% chance, a coin flip of forming in the next 5 days, will be a hurricane, when we really can't tell you anything about any potential intensity for an invest when it's potentially 5+ days from forming, if it does form in the first place.
Yep, I can see that our member Ike is searching for that imagery, so as soon as he finds it, we will be able to view it. And I think we've got one now, so let's take a look at that. There's the imagery provided by Ike, and you can see the water vapor and the disparity. The greens are the very moist areas, that latest flare-up coming from Gonzalo. The yellows and oranges, that's the very dry air masses. You can also see some moisture off the Bahamas as well, which one or two people mentioned earlier. That's not going to be anything. Any thoughts on this imagery? And I had to mute Ike earlier because there was a lot of feedback. I don't know if you want to say anything yourself, actually, Ike. Or anyone else.
Yeah. I'm just saying in general that you can see the abundance of dry air very close to Gonzalo right now that has basically crippled it compared to what we were potentially expecting from this yesterday and 2 days ago. So very fortunate that the dry air originating from Africa has really obliterated a lot of the expectations that were priorly laid out for this. And also of note, the recon aircraft it passed of the northeastern quadrant. No tropical storm force winds at flight level there. Not even barely reaching 25 knots
in Gonzalo.
Level. Yeah.
Oh
so
my goodness.
The only quadrant they haven't sampled is the southwestern quadrant.
And it's not going to be there. They're going to have to downgrade it then.
To be fair, it's going to be its last shot because there has been a bit of a flare-up of convection associated with it in the past hour or so. But if there isn't any tropical storm force winds in that quadrant, this is no longer a tropical storm.
I don't think it's a tropical storm given that information then.
Yeah.
Honestly, extremely fortunate. There's no way to understate that. When this first became a tropical storm, soon after that, it was looking pretty well organized and it's expected to become a potential mid-range Category 1 hurricane. To see that not materialize at all and have this potentially not even be a tropical storm by the time it passes the Windward Islands, which is where the main land impacts we've been talking about for the past several days were even located, is extraordinary.
And a question I believe came in about why is there so much dust out there? Well, in short, it's the Sahara Desert that's producing it all, as we know. But well, it's very common occurrence that the dust gets whipped up and out over the Atlantic Ocean. The patterns of airflow take it almost invariably to the west, out over the open ocean. And there's just another example, another case of one of these episodes where it gets flowed out way over the Atlantic, and they made a big deal, didn't they, about that other plume that happened a few weeks back, how it reached Texas and wherever. But this thing is quite common.
Yeah, this is especially when we're not near the peak tropical season and the general intertropical convergence zone moves it to its furthest north. The Saharan air layer can be pretty suppressive for tropical cyclone development, which is what we've seen here. It's called the Sahara air layer for a reason. It comes from the Sahara Desert, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like you said, it can be very wide-reaching at times when those really strong plumes get picked up and moved over. All those headlines about, Saharan air layer invasion into the United States
my goodness.
are proof of that, really.
We're just getting a zoom in now on Houston and the coastal region of Texas there. You can see two little rain cells there, maybe not so little. Some dark reds in that colouring there, so it could be quite heavy along I-10 coming out of Houston to the west. But elsewhere there isn't anything major in terms of rainfall in the region. It's quite quiet actually, but I imagine that winds will start to pick up if they aren't already. There's also another little rain area there in central western Louisiana. So looking at the picture, generally pretty quiet over land areas, but again you're drawn to that circulation, the storm revolving as it continues westward, which they say is around 10 miles per hour, the National Hurricane Center's update. We'll be here for another 15 minutes before we hand back to our automated feed, which you can find at youtube.com/force13/live. That's an automated feed that's showing all kinds of imagery around the clock. We'll be live again tomorrow, assuming that the storm's still making a beeline for where we think it is. We'll be live again at 6 a.m. Central Time tomorrow morning with more coverage on Hanna.
Exactly. And someone asked, just a point of conversation, because I know when we talk about this nonstop for like 3 hours, it can get a bit mundane, repeating the same things over and over again. Someone's saying that we're currently 2 storms ahead of the of the 2005 season. Is that correct? I'm pretty sure the G
at least one
today, right? It formed today. I'm assuming.
I can't remember.
If anyone could get it formed today or tomorrow, so we're really barely 2 or 1 ahead in terms of named storms. But just looking at it at the surface of named storms doesn't really tell you the whole story. We've had 8 named storms so far, but none of them have currently reached hurricane intensity at all. While for the first 6 storms of the 2005 season, 3 of them were hurricanes, 2 of them were major hurricanes, and 1 of them was a Category 5 hurricane. So, in comparison, I think we're just crossing double-digit aces for the season right now, with 8 named storms already. The 2005 Atlantic hurricane season at this comparable time period had, I think, about 6 times that.
Was it 6
So
times?
very different situations. We can talk about how far this season may go in terms of how many named storms it gets, but comparing that and 2005, which was comparatively much more destructive already, although we can't really make assumptions about what's going to happen exactly down the line this year. Completely different ballparks.
Yeah, GERT formed July 24th, 2005.
Yeah, so unless it formed at 11 p.m. on July 24th, we're already technically only 1 storm ahead for the time being. So I wouldn't say that's exactly accurate. And for asking what is the chance of breaking that season, well, we can't really say, to be honest. It's technically possible, but putting a number odd on it when so many different variables are constantly at play, and not just saying that we're concerned for the continuation of a very active season, wouldn't be too prudent of us to do right now.
Looking at satellite imagery once again, are there any more conclusions we can draw?
Other than just the general trend of continued organization that's resulted in the Navy files to upgrade it to 50 knots, which is likely what the National Hurricane Center will do at their latest update.
That'll be 10 p.m.
Yep. So it's in about an hour and 15 minutes or so. We can just say the storm's continuing to look
2 hours.
Better compared to yesterday, better compared to 12 hours ago, and that's posing a significant threat to southern Texas, really. The recon plane that was supposed to go in on that search and rescue mission won't be able to do its scheduled investigation into Hanna, so we're not really going to get any direct data unless they send another plane in sometime tonight.
You can see that Isaac is on the move right now. He's sideways, though.
He's on the move.
He's on the move somewhere. But you can see the cloud cover even if it is sideways. I hope he can get that message and turn it the right way up.
He's deafened, so he can't hear us right now, but
someone get it through to him.
The general cloud cover associated with it is definitely something to watch. Along with the photos that we showed us earlier.
We'll come back to that if we can.
We can't forget the storm surge threat of up 2 to 4 feet for Baffin Bay, Corpus Christi Bay, as well as a few which is expected also.
Yeah, this isn't like a land area necessarily where it's just straight beaches into coastline. There's some more atoll-like features, along coastal Texas that even 2 to 4 feet of storm surge can be quite significant for. So those low-lying areas should be rushing preparations to completion now. And if you're in that area in particular and watching this, make sure you have your plan in place. There is one county in southern Texas that does have a voluntary evacuation order in place for parts of it. So if you're in that county, check with your local officials and see what is required or suggested of you to do for your safety.
Where's that again?
Let me get that back up real quick. I had it earlier. Let me roll. I gotta roll way back.
Yeah, we said that towards the start of our coverage tonight.
Yeah, we said it's Kleber County. Parts of Kleber County have voluntary evacuation in place. In that particular location right now, make sure that you have your hurricane plan in place in case it's decided that you and your family need to evacuate for your safety.
Nathan?
Yes?
I have a question off Facebook. Why isn't Trinidad under any warnings?
Trinidad, did you say?
Yep.
Well, that's a good question. It's not the National Hurricane Center that issues the warnings, though. It's the national governments that do that. So ask the Trinidad and Tobago authorities why there's no warning for Trinidad. I think they were going off the advice from National Hurricane Center that it would go further north and that only Tobago would get any impacts.
Yeah. Although, to be fair to them, if it ends up moving further south and moving directly over Trinidad right now, if the southwest pass of the recon plane doesn't show any tropical storm force winds, they wouldn't even technically need a tropical storm warning because they wouldn't be getting tropical storm force winds.
Yeah.
Yep.
And also...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you got it.
In Trinidad and Tobago, up to 2 to 4 inches of rain could still fall, according to the National Hurricane Center.
Definitely could be a rain event. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So, localized flash flooding is still definitely a concern for the region. Just because a storm doesn't necessarily have winds with it doesn't mean that it doesn't pose a significant threat. I think this was just a question for verification. Someone's asking, who found the 60-mile-an-hour winds in Hanna? Because the recon plane didn't go into Hanna's core to get recon passes because it's off doing the search and rescue. That was deemed by the ATCF Navy files. That the system's at 50 knots or 60 miles an hour, according to their estimates. And
I don't think it's a who. It's probably influenced by what the advanced Dvorak technique is saying. I can tell you actually right now that NOAA's Dvorak technique is suggesting that this storm is 65 miles per hour.
Yeah. So, I wouldn't be surprised if we end up, tonight at 11 Eastern, 10 p.m. Central, seeing them up this to 60 miles an hour, then saying, because of Dvorak and lack of recon aircraft going through the center of the storm, this may be potentially conservative. They do that sometimes.
SSEC's version agrees at 65 miles an hour, so maybe that's the number to go with right now. I certainly wouldn't put it past this storm.
Yeah, I mean, they still have about 2 hours until the next update's really expected to be out. So if the trend continues and those numbers still show that, the National Hurricane Center doesn't have to go with what the HCCF is saying. So they could technically go to 65 if they think it's actually at that strength using the available estimate techniques that we have.
Well, all the satellite estimates are saying it. That's all we can tell you right now.
And actually, just something else as well. Nelson's been able to post this in the live comms room. It's important to note that the impacts from this system aren't just in Texas. Because of its size, impacts are reaching other parts of the coastal United States, including Louisiana, where in Livingston Parish, they've actually closed waterways to recreational traffic beginning at 10 p.m. Central Time tonight until further notice. So in 2 hours from now, recreational sea traffic on waterways will be halted until further notice in that area.
Surprised they didn't do that earlier, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, well, to be fair to them, it's really a lot of this has really only happened in the past several hours or so.
Yeah, but
if you really zoom out on the satellite imagery, you can kind of get a view of it if you show visual.
It's already starting to move away from Louisiana.
Somewhat, but rip currents and stuff are still going to be there for a while after. And if you look at the satellite imagery, rain bands from this system are actually more inland Louisiana than they are in Texas right now.
They are right now, yeah.
Yeah. The National Hurricane Center is still expecting 3 to 5 inches of rain along the upper Texas and Louisiana coasts.
Yeah, that's very true. If you look at the rainfall graphics that are published, inland Texas towards bigger cities like Houston and Dallas aren't really expecting too much rainfall, but there are spots in Louisiana from the system that, as of a couple hours ago, from about 3:30 p.m. Central Time, we're still expecting an additional 4, 5, or 6 inches of rain. So, I mean, even though the system's moving away from that location, still a rainmaker and threat for those areas.
Another question about whether Gonzalo will pull a Harvey. No.
No.
No. If you look at the forecast miles for where the center of circulation is going to be when this thing likely dissipates in the Eastern Caribbean Sea now, we'll get a recon pass soon to see if it even is still a tropical storm in the first place. The center of circulation is basically supposed to move due west, a slight tilt to the west-northwest, and end up impacting Central America. If you're tracking it exactly long term, you might be lucky to see it barely emerge over the southern bay of Campeche, but you won't be seeing anything really happen in terms of moving into the Gulf of Mexico far enough north for it to attempt anything like that.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm just
Well, Isaac disappeared, it seems.
Oh my.
Video right now.
Well, we're hearing audio from Isaac and his sideways camera.
Oh boy, let me fix that for a second.
Oh, it's gone again. Okay. Well, it was coming. Well, that's over there somewhere, and we're waiting for that.
Yeah. Oh,
Let's go back to the satellite. Oh, the camera's back. Okay, we got the.
For people that might be in Texas right now, going through this, I don't know if you can hear right now, but you can describe potentially some of the things that you're doing to prepare for the storm, because you are under a hurricane warning right now. It'd be very informative.
Isaac, where have you been just now?
Oh, I went to go out and wait on my brother to get out of work here. For some reason, he's still supposed to go to work tomorrow during the thick of this for some reason, because I guess they don't care about their employees, but whatever. But what I did to prepare for this was I made sure I had everything that could go flying around in this hurricane, well, soon to be hurricane. I made sure I tucked them close because I have a railing, and I made sure they're secure. I secured them with bungee cords, a lot of bungee cords, so they don't go flying around. And a little bit later on, when I get off the stream, I'll I'll look back on my reports and see if I still need to do anything, make sure I finalize my preparations, and then probably call it a night here and just wait and see for what Hanna has to bring to here in Corpus Christi, Texas.
Some
I've
questions.
seen people board up there.
So,
Go ahead.
some questions about San Antonio. How do you think it will go there?
It's going to be fine, and if you're going to be, I mean, this is going to be, as of this point in time, supposed to be a low-end Cat 1 when it makes landfall. If you're wanting to evacuate, that would be a good spot to evacuate to, because they'll probably just get the far outer cirrus cloud from this, and that'll be about it, really.
And also Laredo as well.
I don't know about a Laredo. It might go over and affect Laredo.
I think it could be
later on down the
significant
line.
rainfall there.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if that would be the best bet. I mean, if we're trying to get away from the wind, maybe, but if you're fine with flooding and stuff, then whatever suits your needs, I guess. But if you're going to evacuate, you're going to have to do it by about 8 or 9 in the morning tomorrow. After that point, tropical storm force conditions, of course, start to be felt here.
It'll have to be first thing, yep. Well, at this stage, we're going to end our discussion now, our coverage of this storm. We are, for now at least, we are still live on the automated feed, which is going out 24/7 as we play our music. There it is. Our outro music, wonderful. And we'll be back with more coverage on this storm with commentary beginning at 6 a.m. Central Time. That's Saturday morning, 6 a.m. onwards. I'm not sure how long that's going to go for, but that's when we'll be back here on the channel with commentary. Now, I should explain, if it sounds a little bit awkward and impromptu, that's because this is the first time we've actually done 2 streams on the channel at the same time. And there's been a different format, and it's been really confusing for me. So hopefully we'll be better at it tomorrow. So I think the best bet is to subscribe, and it will come up in your notifications or on the feed somewhere when we start that next stream at 6 a.m. Whoa, that's loud. You'll know when and where. Thanks for that interruption. So at 6 a.m, just pop back, I suppose, and then it will flash up on your screen somewhere. Or later than that if you're a later riser. But that's when we'll be back with the latest coverage on this storm. That's all for now from here at HQ. Back to our automated stream, which you can find at youtube.com/force13/live. Strat, any final words?
Just that everyone in southern Texas, along those portions of the coastline, are set to be impacted. Please make sure your preparations are rushed to completion. Listen to your local weather office for information about your exact location, and just do everything you can to stay safe. I know this is, obviously a developing situation that's not safe at all. It's quite dangerous. So make sure that you and your family and your loved ones are being prepared properly, staying informed, and staying safe.
We'll be here with you tomorrow with more coverage, but for now, good night. Stay safe out there. It's getting busy.